Welcome to the Complete Street Commission's January 14th regular commission meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating in accordance with public health guidelines. I would like to introduce the Complete Streets Commission members and city staff present. I'm Chair Athena Irakomos. Commissioners present include Sally Cole, Jackie Sebrian, Meredith Bergen-Bailey, Matthew Raskoff, and Kevin Rennie. City staff present include Azalea Mitch, Public Works Director, Joanna Chan, Transportation Manager, Katrine Maki, Senior Transportation Planner, and Cassandra Cortez, Associate Transportation Planner. Katrine, would you please provide instructions to the Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Thank you, Chair Irakomos and members of the Complete Streets Commission. For members of the public who wish to provide public comment for any item on tonight's agenda, after the Chair calls for public comment on that item, if you are in person, we ask that you fill out a speaker card available at the back table and return that to the clerk's desk with me. And if you're participating virtually, attendees on Zoom may engage a raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. That concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrine. The first item is reports and announcements. Under reports and announcements, city staff and commission members may communicate general information of interest regarding matters within the jurisdiction of the commission. No commission discussion or action can occur on any of the presented items. Katrine, are there any reports or announcements?
Yes, I wanted to let you know that yesterday the City Council had 2 transportation-related updates. They received an update on the city's Middle Avenue pedestrian and bicycle rail crossing project and an update on the city's shuttle operations. You can read the staff reports that are published in the City Council agenda. They were just informational items. No action was taken last night. That concludes my reports and announcements.
Thank you, Katrine. Next, we'll move to public comment. Under public comment, members of the public may address the Complete Streets Commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. You are not required to provide your name or city of residence, but it would be helpful. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Katrine, could you please call for general public comment?
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please fill out a speaker card from the back table and bring it to the clerk's desk, and please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. I have no one in queue for public comment. I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you. So we'll move to regular business. Under regular business, the commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require commission approval. The first regular business item tonight is item E1, to accept the Complete Streets Commission minutes for December 10th, 2025. Is there any clarification from the commission before I take public comment?
I have item G, I'm just wondering, it says Commissioner Bailey reported out on the new Menlo Park School District Electric Bicycle Policy Commission, but I wasn't sure if it should just say policy.
Mm-hmm. You should probably just say policy.
Yeah, yes. Okay. I had nothing further.
Thank you. Katrine, could you please call for public comment on this item?
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please fill out the speaker card from the back table and bring it to the clerk's desk, and please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Having no one in queue for public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you. Do I have a motion and second to accept the minutes? Commissioner Bergen-Bailey for the motion and Commissioner Sebrian is second. All those in favor?
Sebrian, sorry, so unanimous ayes.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item E2, to receive an update on the San Mateo County Bike Plan update. Kaki Chung, Deputy Director at City County Association of Governments of San Mateo County, will introduce this item. A note of clarification of an error in the agenda. It reads the San Mateo County Bike Plan update. This is an error. We will receive an update tonight on the San Mateo County Transportation Plan update.
Thank you, Commissioners, and good evening. I'm Kaki Chung. I'm the Deputy Director for CCAG, the City and County Association of Governments for San Mateo County. Thank you so much for having me here tonight to talk to you about the countywide transportation plan update. And I'll just note that this is a joint effort to update the plan with the San Mateo County Transportation Authority. So a little bit about what I'll go over tonight. Mainly, I'll provide an overview of the countywide transportation plan, what it is, why we're updating it, and what we're learning in terms of how people currently move around in the county, and then how it ties into your community priorities. See if I could. Okay. So before I dive right in, I'll just give a little bit brief intro on two of our organizations. Like I said, I represent CCAG, and we are the designated countywide transportation agency. We have members from each of the 21 jurisdictions within the county that serve on our board, and our vision and goal is to provide a safe, equitable, and accessible multimodal transportation network. Our partner on this project is the Transportation Authority. Similar to CCAG, we both make funding decisions. CCAG handle a lot of the local, regional, and federal funding. And the TA, they handle the Measure A and Measure W sales taxes. Both of our agencies make transportation investments throughout the county. So a little bit about the Countywide Transportation Plan, CTP for short. It's really a long-term vision for how people get around within the county, whether it's through driving, walking, biking, or using transit. It's a plan that really guides our funding decisions at both agencies, whether it's long movements or short-term, and it really influences how local projects get implemented. For the city of Menlo Park, US 101, Willow Road, Caltrain, ECR, those are all kind of key connector routes that would be of your interest. So we update the plan back in 2017. That was the last time we updated, and it's many other plans that came out from it. And that's just a short list of some of the plans that we wanted to highlight, whether it's on active transportation or Samtrans Reimagine Samtrans plan or housing plan. The CTP serves as a guiding framework for that. And since the plan update back in 2017, so what has been completed, some of the major projects we want to note, it's the operation of the 101 Express Lane, 22 miles from county line all the way to 380. Caltrain has electrified, and then we have completed most of our work on the Smart Corridor from East Palo Alto all the way to San Bruno, and we're moving to the town of Colma, Daly City, and Brisbane. The Smart Corridor project, it's a technology project that leverages tools like CCTV cameras or dynamic signs to guide motorists off the highway if there's a major incident. And it also provides tool for cities and Caltrans to manage non-recurring or recurring congestion. And then we've also made a lot of investments from the active transportation front, University Avenue, pedestrian crossing, just to name some of the investment that we've made. So tonight I'm here to talk to you about the plan. We're going to use the feedback that we're going to get to help us define the vision and goals for this plan. Later in the spring or summer, we're going to generate a list of programs and projects that will feed into the CTP, into the plan. In order for a project to receive federal funding, it has to be identified in this countywide plan. That's why it's important that all the projects and programs are accurately captured. So the city would be able to apply for funding. So we're going to come back for the second round. So you guys might see us again or at council talking about the projects within your jurisdiction. And then we're going to hope to wrap up the plan later in fall and winter timeframe. So in terms of the plan, what we're hoping to do is that, we aim to be flexible. I think if anything we've learned from the pandemic is that we travel patterns, things could change overnight. So we're really trying to be nimble and flexible with this plan. We wanted to identify pilot programs where we would be able to implement and try it out, and before we take it out on a county-wide level. We really want to leverage local funding to be able to use the local funding we have to apply for state and federal funds to bring more resources within the county. Currently, we have different equity definitions across some of the transportation agencies, whether Samtrans or the TA. So throughout this process, we're really trying to establish a shared definition of what equity means, as it is a critical component of how we rank and award funding to projects. We also wanted to select a short list of metrics where we would be able to measure how well we're doing. And I think most importantly, we just want the plan to be useful to local practitioners and policymakers like yourself. So the next set of slides just capture kind of the current transportation trends that we have observed or heard from the public as we did some of the plans in the last few years. And this just represents a list of studies that have been done since the last plan update. There are many of those, and this is just a sample list. But we're really, trying not to redo the work, but drawing from surveys, community events, and other things that we have gone to and heard from. And, we've done over 30,000 outreach to county residents in the last few years, whether it's through online survey, social media, or in-person event. And those outreach were done in multiple languages. And here are some of the results that and trends that we're seeing. So from a commuting perspective, over 70% of the county residents or workers are still driving alone. And whether it's cross-county line into other county for work or to other cities. But this just means that, regional coordination is really essential. And, over 66%, according to the American Community Survey, over 60% of the residents actually work within the county. So we see a lot of potential opportunities for expanding short trip options and making alternative options available for them to use other than driving alone. And on this slide, what I want to warn you is the numbers on the left-hand side, the blue, represents currently how people are traveling today based on that survey. And then the numbers in the orange or maroon, those represent the modes that these residents would like to travel. So what you could see, I'll just pick an example. 38% of the survey respondents, they're currently traveling by train. Actually, that may not be a good example. I'll use the drive alone one. So 61, because they are different surveys. So I know the previous slide shows 70% of folks are driving to work, but based on this particular survey, 61% of respondents are driving to work alone. But really, they, really want to just take the train to where they want to go rather than driving alone. Like, only 19% of folks wish that they're driving alone. So you could see that between the two sets of numbers, there's no perfect match. And, those who are driving now wish that they could take transit more often. From the roadway network perspective, 101, 280, 84, and, 92, or those are all kind of the primary regional routes and connecting corridors. And it's not surprising that most folks are concerned about traffic congestion. And, it doesn't matter whether you live on the bay side or the coast side, traffic congestion remain as the top concern. Roadway safety is another thing that rises to the top, and folks are concerned about unsafe driving behaviors like speeding or distracted driving. And then from the transit network side, primary transit providers are mostly along the bay side, like Caltrain, Samtrans, and BART. And just to put some numbers in perspective, Samtrans have an annual boarding of 10 million, and BART and Caltrain each contribute about 2 to 3 million from our county alone. And what we're seeing is that, transit ridership are slowly climbing, but they still have not yet gone back to the pre-pandemic level. And, we do see that ridership are increasing every day, and we know that with Caltrain's electrification, things are improving, but yeah, still not back to the pre-pandemic level. But from a bus and shuttle perspective, the Samtrans ridership have actually rebounded back 100% to pre-pandemic. So they are a great success story that we're all excited about. But, from a shuttle perspective, for example, commute.org shuttle, they typically take commuters from Caltrain station to major employment centers or hub. Those are unfortunately performing at 50% below pre-pandemic level. I think it's contributing factors like more flexible work from home schedule, just has created a negative impact. But we, along with commute.org and the TA and Samtrans, we're all looking at how we restructure the future of the shuttle program. So more to come in the next year on that. But in general, survey respondents are saying they want more frequent and reliable transit, and they wanted more first and last mile connections and more affordability in terms of fare. In terms of active transportation, on the map you see on the right, it's showing a map of the backbone network. While we know that biking and walking, oftentimes those routes are, within the city level, but we're really trying to build out a longer backbone network that connects folks from, across jurisdictions, especially with the more availability of e-bikes and a longer the ability to bike a longer distance more comfortably. Connectivity, intersection improvement, safety, those remain kind of the important aspects that cyclists and pedestrians all worry about, better lighting, slower speed, or wanting, lower level stress bike and walking facilities. So looking ahead to 2050, which is the planning horizon, major effort, we have a lot of major transportation efforts that are currently underway, whether it's the Grand Boulevard Initiative along El Camino Real that Samtrans is leading. We're starting to implement our local road and safety plan, which is our Vision Zero plan at the county level. As I mentioned, we're doing shuttle program update and 10192 improvement projects. Constructions are actively going on right now. If you do drive past that, you've probably seen some activities going on. So yeah, these are all these different improvements that are underway. And we know that there are a lot of external factors that are at play that will influence the future of our travel. I mean, just take autonomous vehicle for one, and we're seeing a lot of Waymo, activities along El Camino Real, and they're expanding their service area. E-bike safety is another topic that was really key over the course of last year, and housing supply and costs and aging population. So we know that there are a lot of external factors that are at play, and we may not have, full control of everything, but we do want to, be able to plan for transportation future that is resilient and multimodal. So that brings us to our questions for you tonight. We really want to hear from you in terms of, from your perspective, what is working well? What are some of the critical challenges that you think are facing this county today from a transportation perspective? Are there specific neighborhoods or populations that you feel like are not being served well? And the last, question of, if you have a magic wand, what project would you like to see implemented? So I'm here to look forward to getting your feedback. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Are there any clarifying questions from the commission before I take public comment?
I just had one. You had mentioned about federal funding. I think you said that, there was 21 municipalities or whatever within the county, and was it that they had to submit lists of projects to be included in the countywide plan in order to qualify for federal funding?
That's correct.
Okay.
And we'll be working with your public works directors over the next few months to gather those projects. I mean, since the last plan, we do have a set that was previously submitted, but things might have changed. So we're going to be going back out and working with your public works team to make sure that that project list is refreshed and updated and reflecting your latest priorities.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I think I had another one. When you were talking about the driving alone statistic, I'm just curious what we can compare it to in terms of, is it much different in Santa Clara County, for example? I'm just curious if we spike up.
Yeah, I don't have the Santa Clara County data available right now or at my fingertips, but I'm happy to look through that, research that, and have the team get back to you. But I think in general, in the U.S., over 60% of folks do drive alone, but we're a fairly good,
Is that
pretty
right?
big
Okay.
country. So
Yeah.
let me look into that, and if I do find that statistics, I'm happy to share it with your staff and provide that as a
Okay.
follow-up.
Thank you. I think I had one more. Oh, I'm just curious what your thoughts are around the commute.org shuttles with the low ridership, because we, as a commission, heard from staff, had a presentation from staff around suggested changes to the Menlo Park shuttle program. And it seems like ridership is a persistent issue, and I'm curious that it is at the county level as well. And I'm just, it looked really low. It looked like it was 2% of people maybe on a county. But it just looked so low that I just wondered if what your team's analysis is on the reason for that, and if you think there's something we're missing.
Yeah, no, so the commute.org shuttles, those mainly serve the commuters getting from transit hub to kind of major employment area.
Yeah.
And definitely the change in travel patterns and travel times. And, it used to be a very clear kind of peak from 7 to or 6 to 9 or, so the changing pattern of that.
I see.
And then sometimes, the frequency may not necessarily be what folks
line up.
want. So that, I think, results to kind of low ridership. And that's why we're trying to look at it as a whole. And sometimes the cost per rider could be quite high because we're having to invest into the shuttle maintenance, right? Having a driver. And so the cost benefit and analysis sometimes may not necessarily work out. If you look at it like the cost per rider may be quite high just because on the lower ridership than
Right.
before.
Exactly.
So it makes it challenging to justify sometimes running a certain route. But yeah, that's why we're looking at the whole shuttle program as a whole.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your response. I guess I just had one more thing and then I'm done. With regard to carpooling, I'm just wondering if the fact that people are staggering their leave times more is influencing their ability to find carpools that are convenient to them, and maybe also because people have more flexibility in their schedules, working from home, working, maybe they don't have as regular schedules in terms of when they're commuting, and that might be impacting carpools.
Yeah, certainly. And I think, before the pandemic, a lot of folks have to be in the office or their place of work like 5 days a week. So they're like, oh, I don't want to be driving all the time. But now what we're seeing is that because folks are able to, or have some folks have the ability to be in the office 2 to 3 times a week, and they're like, okay, I'm just going to tough it out and only drive on a few days, and they feel like they wanted it. They ended up driving alone compared to what it was before.
Carpool, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I had 2 clarifying questions. Is carpool specifically designated as, can it be members of the same household? Is it just more than one person in the car? Okay, that's perfect. I was curious about that. And then anytime we see walk on any of the data points, is that the entirety of the commute was accomplished as a pedestrian, or is that some portion of the commute was walked?
I'll have to go back to that particular survey. I think Samtrans was the one that pulled it together. So
I did see on at least one that it was like part of the way. I just wasn't sure if that carried through all of the data points.
Yeah, it may be because we compile like a number of survey and responses to pull together the deck. So it could be that some of the deck is referring to one part of the trip being a walking trip versus an entire it being a walking trip in its entirety. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. It's very good, very thorough. My one clarifying question was, I was looking at slide 15 and comparatively to slide 23, I guess there are different surveys. So if we go, yeah. So this one compared to the earlier ones, it looks like biking, e-bike, e-scooter, walking, and rolling types of things are what people would like to do more significantly than the previous surveys. Is that something that you'd put more weight on because it's a more recent survey than other ones closer to the pandemic? How do you work with the numbers? Do you pick and choose kind of things to fit certain agendas, or is it like we're going straight? I guess that's a way to, loaded question there, but it does seem like, at least reading this, a lot of things are trending, and I guess we're seeing that anecdotally, like biking, walking, and scootering is the trend now. Are we going to find ways to support it? Thank you.
Yeah, we're always looking for ways to support multimodal and multiple modes. I think we just wanted to find data that is relevant to the topic, and we don't, we always prioritize biking and walking and looking to make investments to support these. So I hope that tries to answer the question. But yeah, because these data are from different surveys, sometimes they may not be always consistent. But what we're trying to do is convey a trend and larger observation, excuse me.
Well, clarifying question. The beginning of the presentation says that there's a short number of metrics and goals. Is that coming later in the process? Because I didn't see them in the presentation. And what are the metrics and goals that you're thinking about? And is VMT considered to be one of them? Or, the multimodal question, are there targets around that you're contemplating?
Yeah, those will come later as we kind of finish defining the goals, vision and goals, since we're still in the early phase of defining that. So most likely we're going to develop a list of metrics that measure how well we're doing, against the goals. So since we're still in that defining stage right now, we don't have the metrics ready yet. But when we're getting towards the latter part of the plan development process, those will certainly be available. And we're going to try to put some numbers to say, hey, increase the number of biking and walking trips by X%, something like that. So it's not that metric; those metrics are not ready yet for this plan.
Kind of along with that same sort of question. I guess it's not the same question, but I was wondering about you're talking about how the travel patterns for commutes have changed a lot. Has that like reduced congestion significantly at the peak hours, or just kind of spread it out across the whole day? Or, because I know I've sometimes tried to drive at like 3 o'clock and it's awful. And I feel like it shouldn't be awful at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, and I think that's the trend that we're observing. Instead of having very clear peak and valley, now with the traffic volume, it's kind of more even out and more consistent throughout the day because folks do seem to have more flexibility with their schedule. So the traffic volume has not fully returned back to the pre-pandemic level, but we're getting close. And
Okay, so yeah, I mean, part of that question is like, how do you measure that? Are you measuring that with VMT, or are you measuring that with just like number of cars on the road?
yeah,
Okay.
typically it's traffic volume and the average daily vehicle that is on the road.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further clarifying questions from the commission, Katrine, could you please call for public comment?
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press star 9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please fill out a speaker card from the back table, bring it to the clerk's desk, and please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Having no one in queue for public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you. Does anyone on the commission have further comments addressed towards these questions that we have in front of us?
I was going to say, currently working. It's nice to see the rebound for Caltrans. Some of the key challenges, I would say, maybe close to 80 years ago, everything was designed back then, and to make a change is extremely challenging. But I would like to have a greater view and keep an open mind and really see what we can do, because change is difficult. I know this is very up in the air type of thing, but yeah, I think we can do some greater stuff and get away from a car-centric world. Underserved areas, at least in Menlo Park, Bellhaven, which is the triangle, we call it, Highway 114, Highway 84, Highway 101. When 101 was created, basically it was supposed to be on the bay and just hug the bay, but those communities are totally cut off from the rest, and something seriously needs to happen to bring them back in. East Palo Alto, Bellhaven, East Menlo Park. I'm inspired by what they did in the Presidio, basically building a bridge and a tunnel to bring us back, because those are our neighbors, but we put them over there and we forget them. It would be nice that there could be more connections there. The positive things that I found with the Dumbarton Corridor Study Project, that's huge. And we need more connectors like that somehow. And yeah, even like Marsh Road, I ride my bike over Marsh Road over 101 to get to Bellhaven and the Bay Trail. And it's really scary. I barely do it. I wish I could take my kids there. I can't. Yeah. And then,
Can you say again exactly what?
Marsh Road. Marsh Road. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, you're welcome. And then I would say the Bay Trail. I ride the Bay Trail to Sunnyvale to work Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's probably one of the best parts, other than spending time with my family. If we could expand that, I think a lot of people would use it. I know the feedback is just homeless people are going to hang out there or do those things, but there's more recreation and things that could come of that. And there's a couple of my friends in the biotech industry that ride their bikes to South San Francisco, and it's a total mess to get there. So if that was there, I think they would use it for sure. And then the other thing that I'd like to see is a frontage path along Caltrans. It is awesome in Palo Alto. We use it all the time to get around. There's basically a frontage path right next to Caltrans. If something like that could happen in Menlo Park or extended, I know there's right-of-ways and private property and stuff, but if there's anything like that, I think more people would ride the train because it would be easier to get to. You could just get right on the path from wherever you are and ride it down. And I know ridership in Menlo Park, a lot of people bike in Menlo Park to get to that transit. And I think it would even be more of an enhancement there. Much appreciated. I don't know where the dollars came from, but the bike storage that was just added to that was huge. But yeah, that's all I had for now. Thank you.
Oh, I have not a lot, but I would sorry, I just have a couple things. I would echo the presentation was great. It was really thorough, and what I would say is everything that Commissioner Rennie just said. And then I really, if I could wave a magic wand, the project I would most like to see is that Dumbarton Rail Corridor turned into, like, I've lived right next to those tracks for like 16 years now. And pretty much all that time, I've been thinking what a great bike ped path it would make while we were trying to figure out what was going to happen to it. And so if I could wave a magic wand, it would absolutely turn that into a bike ped path to Marsh Manor and ultimately onto Redwood City Caltrain Station. So like, it's just such an ideal spot. And it pains me to see that really valuable space just go unused. So that really would be it. And the other thing I would add to the population of neighborhoods that aren't well served, I do think, especially if we're looking at trying to eliminate the drive alone people, that sort of the further you get out, like I live in the Bellhaven neighborhood, it is, a little bit out from Caltrain, but so is the like far end of Sharon Heights. So like we've got some sprawl. And so figuring out how to help people efficiently get from where they are in the hills to Caltrain, I don't know how to, it's not that it's not there. I think it's not there in a way that people are able to easily, I don't know why they're not using it, but it feels like, an app. Anyway, thank you so much.
And if I may provide a comment, I know that Samtrans is kicking off their Dumbarton study again. So hopefully you guys will hear more, or there will be more developments or improvements coming your way. Yeah.
I would just really like them to include bikes and peds. Like the train, I guess, would be okay, but the bikes and peds are the thing I really hope to get in there.
Hello, thank you again. It's always interesting to get the perspective of the county, because we go round and round in Menlo Park and think about it so much, so thank you. I guess I had a couple of thoughts in terms of what's working well. I have taken Caltrain more in the past year than I ever took it, and I've lived in Menlo Park for 13 years. So that I do agree with Kevin, Commissioner Rennie, on that point. The other thing also is that I did recently use the lanes. I know this is two big projects you talked about, but the faster lanes, express lanes on 101, really effective. So thank you for moving things along. I also did appreciate what you said about using technology to highlight congestion and rerouting people off roads. That happened last night. My friend and I were going to the city. 280 had a lot of accidents on it. And it was really unbelievable how many prompts and sort of directive signals we were given. So all these three things that you talked about, I have seen and I really appreciate it. In terms of key challenges, I think I'd like to, all you have to do is really look at a map. You were showing a map of the bike network, and there are all these green bike paths like right along the bay. And it's like, where is that one right down El Camino? So, I think one of the ways that the county can really help be like a major influencer and change maker is to leverage that perspective you have, which is take a look at the map. Imagine what it would be like, just the way you did with the express lanes. If you can do express lanes on 101, you can do bike lanes in El Camino. But just to say, what if that were really a corridor, like that didn't have gaps, that didn't, that was smooth, seamless transitions, that sort of it. I don't know if it's going to come about with each little municipality working as its own little chunk. Someone needs to just pull it all together and say, this is what, and I know we've seen the Grand Boulevard Initiative, and I know that's a piece of it, but I think really leaning in and kind of helping the municipalities do it together and do it without too many long time gaps in between. For underserved areas, I just wanted to say that when I hear Commissioner Rennie and Commissioner Seabrian talk about those areas, like, a frontage road on the train that, Palo Alto has and everything else, things like expanding Bay Trail, I think this is a common thing I've heard on the commission over time, is that there's a feeling that, at least in Menlo Park, that there isn't a network of bike that's a connected network to go from place to place with a bike. And you'd mentioned that 60% of people in the county are commuting within the county. So if they're trying to commute on a bike within the county, they're getting a part way in Palo Alto, and then all of a sudden, boop, no more frontage trail, or part way in the Bay Trail, and then it stops. So that, I think, really lean into that from a county perspective, because you can help us connect the dots and get some political leverage to connect the dots. I think it would make a really big difference for bike usage. The other thing I want to say, I live in a neighborhood, I just happen to live in a neighborhood where there are a lot of older people. And also, of course, I'm not one of them, just kidding. And also a lot of kids biking to school and walking to school. So, and I'm continually reminded that those are really the two most vulnerable populations. I don't mean in terms of equity, I just mean in terms of age groups with regard to accidents, bike and ped accidents. And so I wish that we could do more with sidewalks. I'm surprised that, I understand that we've really focused, on bike paths. I think that's really, really important, but there are some really bad sidewalk gaps. And I see older people kind of stepping off the road a lot and trying to make do, but it's obvious that it's not a good situation. And I know it's very expensive, but I'm hoping that we take that seriously. And also obviously crosswalks where a lot of the accidents happen with those two age groups. And I think you have to sometimes make not just the conditions on a road the priority for maybe addressing that road from a safety perspective, but who are the populations that are the most vulnerable, that travel everywhere, and where are the places where they're the most vulnerable? It might not be a big corridor sometimes. Anyway, the last thing I want to mention is for Magic Wand. So you mentioned, I think on one of the slides, it said something about an e-bike incentive program. And I want to speak to that because I think last year, the general chatter around Menlo Park was like, oh, the e-bikes are going too fast. And, and it was almost like e-bikes equals bad, and I appreciated there's two commissioners on our commission who serve on a school district's e-bike commission that just came up with a new policy around e-bikes, which I really respect and I thought was the right direction, just in terms of, one of the reasons was out of control is that no one had said what the rules were, so the school district stepped forward. But I do think that e-bikes really do create a lot of opportunity for people to get from place to place who might not otherwise do so on a bike. Partly, and it takes cars off the road, partly because maybe their commutes are long, and an e-bike will really get them there in the time that they've got to get to where they need to go. So I like the idea of an incentive program because they're still quite expensive. And, there may be a lot of opportunity for people in places that, we're less likely to be able to, spend that kind of money on a bike to really benefit from one or those e-bikes. Partly, I'm just reflecting that I remember there was a lot of feedback at one point that I heard around, opening up a better grocery store right in Bellhaven, and people were still going to the Safeway on El Camino Real. Well, if they have to go to the Safeway on El Camino Real, it'll be a lot easier on an e-bike. So just thinking a little bit, I think the incentive program really caught my eye as something that's really worth looking into. Could be very helpful. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair, if I may add a comment or respond to about the sidewalk. So we do also very much understand that everybody walks at some point during your day to trying to get to where you want to go. So we got a grant to do a sidewalk data inventory because that was one of the challenge we faced when we were trying to update our last countywide bike and ped plan, is that some jurisdictions may have better inventory data on where there are sidewalks and where there are gaps. And then a lot of jurisdictions just don't have that data. So we're leveraging technology, and we're going to be putting out an RFP to work with technology firm using Google Map and AI to, just see what are some of the gaps that are out there. So at least we have a starting point, somewhere to start from. And so we could prioritize, filling those gaps and enabling better access to transit, especially if the gap is near transit stations. So
I really appreciate knowing that. Thank you. And especially that it's data-driven. That's really helpful for the public to understand what's prioritized. Thank you.
so thank you.
I give just a few shorter comments. I want to emphasize a lot of what Vice Chair Cole said about having a network. For example, you have on here as one of the sort of accomplishments that you've done recently, the University Avenue overcrossing, which is a beautiful bridge with great on both sides, kind of crossing the street afterwards. But I work near there. I work a couple blocks from there. I haven't been able to use it because this University Avenue itself, leading up to it, is not doesn't feel safe for me to bike on. And so that kind of network where you're putting a lot of investment into infrastructure, and that I think is really working. This should work, and it's lacking this kind of last piece that would make it accessible to people. I think I just wanted to emphasize that. But what I don't know if this kind of came up a little bit, but I do also want to emphasize this. Transit frequency, I think, is one of them. We don't talk so much about this on the commission, I think, because we don't have transit agencies in Menlo Park. But I really feel like the Caltrain electrification, allowing sort of shorter headways for it, especially on the weekends, really helped the ridership. And so considering that for the shuttle program or for Samtrans, which is doing, as well as before the pandemic, at least, I think those would definitely help being able to access those resources, basically, if you can just show up at the bus stop and 10 minutes later, there's going to be a bus at most, sort of thing. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is just the way that I think about things is very quantitative, and the metrics, I think, are really important when we're, you guys are still in the early stages of this and haven't gotten to the point of deciding on metrics, but I would put a lot of thought into those, because I think that really guides how well these programs are working. So, and I think Menlo Park relies on a lot of the metrics that come down from CCAG and stuff. So that helps us a lot as well. So thank you.
Thank you. The data was fantastic. And I think my fellow commissioners are really hitting it home as far as the points that you have here. I was looking at number 2 key challenges. To me, some of the transportation challenges are really just making people want to do some of these. I do safe routes to school at my kids' school, and we always talk anything but car. Some of these other transportation options. I think we really just need to make people feel safe and feel confident in doing these things. I, at one point, was on the aquatics working committee here, and we got a really interesting email from someone who said, I'm neurodivergent, and coming to the pool kind of makes me nervous. Would it be possible to do a video of what it's like walking in? What do the locker rooms look like? Who do I have to talk to? What do I do? And when I was trying to coach my middle schooler through using Caltrain, it's not super intuitive for someone who's never done anything like that before. And I recognize that's not necessarily your responsibility, but just being able to make people feel really confident in the decisions they're making, and also make it so that doing something new is different but not necessarily scary, and that it doesn't feel like a big barrier. And then also, as far as making people feel safe, I do love a protected bike lane everywhere that we can do that. And because you said magic wand, maybe if every municipality in the county got a mini street sweeper to make that a possibility. Thank you, Miss Mitch. I think that'd be super fantastic. And I also really want to drive home just city connectors. Like right now from Menlo Park, it's super easy to get over to downtown Palo Alto and grab some food or see some friends. It's much, much harder to get to Redwood City, especially if we wanted to go see Zootopia as a family and go to the Cinemark there, or grab food or go to Fireside Books. Just to have those city connectors so that the Bay is so connected, but really by road, not so much in bike or pedestrian methods. And then, because you said magic wand and thinking about my Safe Routes to School hat, the county owns Coleman and Ringwood, which serve multiple school communities. And there's been a study about it. We've talked to some of the county supervisors about it. It's been a years-long project. And just 2 days ago, I was biking from school to home, and we had a bunch of high schoolers coming the wrong way, walking, pedestrians, but it was also the right way because it was the only way for them to be safe, because just that the road is made in such a way that there's just a tiny little shoulder, but then that means that small children coming from the elementary school on bikes are going this way, and bigger children are coming this way as pedestrians. I think there are a couple little spots like that, specifically those two, Ringwood and Coleman, for us here in Menlo Park, that could definitely use a little bit of extra love and attention.
I had a few comments. Those were great ones, and I totally support, the connectivity concepts. I think when we're talking about metrics, it's going to be really important to quantify goals around mode shift. If you look at the survey responses into what we're hearing transit, look how much demand there is for increasing the bike and e-bike, for Caltrain. Like, people want to get out of their cars, but we have not given them the supply to do that. And so I think we should eliminate all the metrics around, miles of road built. I think express lanes induce demand for driving, and we don't actually want that. There's tons of research on that. And I think it's a mistake to be emphasizing the road network at this point. What is reflected here is that people want to stop driving alone. If you look at the orange bar on the left, they want to get into the train and they want to get onto bikes, and we have not given them the means to do that safely. So when we look at the backbone network across the county, the backbone network is it's a lot of it is class 2 lanes, which are not safe, to the point from Commissioner Burke and Bailey. And there's a lot of light blue on that, which is not usable by children. It's not usable by the elderly. What we need to emphasize is the quality of that network and the connectivity that could grant. And I just worry that, when you look at it this way, it looks like we have a pretty robust backbone network, but the truth is that we don't have a very strong one, either north-south or east-west, in my view. And we need, the Grand Corridor. We need major investments, I think, in improving the quality of the infrastructure, because that's what people are basically asking for. Excuse me. On the climate and resilience question, the image shows like burning trees, but the climate issues in San Mateo County are actually around flooding. And I'm concerned that sea level rise and infrastructure resilience on the Bay side is not considered here. And I think it requires explicit treatment. And we need to have, long-term plan. This is a 2050 plan. So the Bay is going to rise by a lot between now and 2050. And I think that needs much more inclusion in this. And then I would emphasize the importance of local coordination in the timeline, as that's laid out for the spring. So Menlo Park has our transportation master plan. There needs to be a mechanism here for coordinating. That's the role of this agency, municipality group, the CCAG opportunity, is to integrate across them. And I think it requires more thought to bring in all the plans, make sure they're working together, make sure we're really, creating this opportunity for connectivity across the municipalities. And I think that it requires more emphasis in this plan to like take on that role of connectivity. I embrace the seamless Bay Area concepts around schedules for transit, around free transfers across agencies. Like we need to be thinking along those lines. There was a proposal in the state Senate last year to combine all of the transit agencies. I think that that has some validity to it, and we need to be thinking about a much more constrained financial future. And like this plan, I don't think takes into account the reality that we're going to be losing the COVID relief funds. The financial situation here is not fully reflected in this plan, and we need to do more with less, and there needs to be more effort to coordinate, to reduce some of the redundancy, and to really integrate the county more effectively within itself and also with our surrounding communities.
Just a personal note, Commissioner Raskoff just reminded me of something. One of my first jobs out of college was working for the New York State Metropolitan Transportation Authority. It was one of the best jobs I ever had. But one thing that was really cool about it was that it was a state authority, but all the little pieces, any little piece of, transportation that affected the New York City metro area was covered underneath that one umbrella. So it was, the Triborough Bridge, all the buses, the trains, everything. And yeah, I was just listening to you thinking, yeah, we really had a lot of power, over connecting all those things because we sort of owned them all. And I know it's not possible to maybe, re-engineer, but I appreciate that it opens up a lot of opportunities, and the connection is where you're going to get the usage. So great point.
Just one more. I'm a big biker. My wife and I used to ride to Pescadero every weekend, pre-kids. Love it over there. More people in the area, more cars. There was just a fatality on the top of 84 in Skyline. And I'd like to have a review of opening some roads or gravel roads just for bikes and pedestrians and hikers. For example, Bear Gulch Road, Star Hill Road, and then county parks. You can't ride your bike in county parks. For example, Huddard Park. I've talked to, I forget, Nick Calderon, I believe his name was. I was speaking with him just anecdotally about like there's Richards Road or something to get people off Kings Mountain and things like that. If that could be looked at, because those are infrastructure that's already there. You just have to say, yes, it's okay. I've gotten ticketed before for riding my bike on trails that I didn't realize. The ticket was, I think, $350. And then the fine was actually only $25 and the rest was service fees.
Good.
And simple things like that, we need to incentivize people to ride their bikes and get off the roads, and that will help with congestion along with everything else. So that's all I had. Thanks.
And I apologize. I had one more too. I even wrote it down and I missed it. I'm on the ad hoc subcommittee for this group doing, looking at e-bikes. And you had mentioned, is the county looking at e-bikes in any sort of comprehensive way? Of course, Marin County has done their thing. Redwood City, I know, has something at least on the docket. Is there anything that the county's looking at that maybe we should anticipate or be aware of as far as e-bikes?
Well, thank you for the question. We actually recently released a request for proposal to have a consultant come on board to look at e-bike for the county. I mean, we know that there are multiple efforts that are going on right now at different jurisdictions, and some cities and town may not have the resources to do that. So this is going to be part of our Vision Zero safety plan implementation. So that's what they're going to focus, one part that they're going to focus on. But what we want to do is look at best practices that have been done throughout California, look at the vehicle code, and then have the consultant come back with some recommendation. I think we're going to see a recommendation by different facility type. Let's say if you want to try to ride e-bikes on county facility or county trails, here's the speed or rules, what you need to adhere to. If it's within a city, here are some of the best kind of practice that we've seen elsewhere. I think what's cool about it, it's that we intend for this consultant to come back with the ordinance, sample ordinance. So then the city staff could use to kind of tailor to your needs with those recommendations in mind. I'm just trying to make it as seamless and as easy for city staff and for the city council to adopt some kind of local ordinance that will work for the jurisdiction. So that we plan to have the work completed by the end of this year. The consultant will be selected probably around April timeframe, and they'll have some initial work completed by the summer as a first, as a first start. So, yeah.
Okay, I think, are there any other comments from the commission? Okay, I think that's our feedback. So thank you for the really thorough presentation.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. You guys will hear from us again soon. So thanks again.
Thanks. Okay, next we will move on to item E3. Recommend the installation of a no stopping zone on the south side of Pierce Road between Carlton Avenue and Del Norte Avenue to City Council. Cassandra Cortez, Associate Transportation Planner, will present this item.
Good evening, Complete Street Commissioners. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Cassandra Cortez. I'm an Associate Transportation Planner here at the City of Menlo Park. And tonight I'll be presenting on the Pierce Road proposed no stopping zone. So tonight's agenda for this item includes 1, an overview of the proposed project area, 2, project background, 3, analysis conducted by staff on the proposed no stopping zone, 4, staff recommendation, and lastly, next steps for this effort. So the proposed no stopping zone on Pierce Road spans from Carlton Avenue to Del Norte Avenue, and parking removal is required to accommodate bicycle facilities due to the limited roadway space on Pierce Road. Without parking removal, dedicated bicycle facilities on Pierce Road wouldn't be possible. And for some context and background specifically on Pierce Road is a two-way local street that has unstriped parking on both the north side and the south side being the US 101 sound wall. And there are sidewalks on the north side, but none on the south side. And Pierce Road also provides connection and access to multiple neighborhood destinations in Belhaven, including the Belhaven Community Campus, the Boys and Girls Club of the Peninsula, Belhaven Elementary School, and also the US 101 Ravenswood Bicycle and Pedestrian Overcrossing. The Transportation Master Plan identifies a Tier 2 project to remove a general purpose travel lane on Pierce Road and reconfigure from a two-way street to a one-way street to provide accommodation for a separated bike lane. However, converting a two-way street to a one-way street would require an extensive circulation study and is not proposed right now within this effort. So Pierce Road is scheduled for resurfacing in 2026, and staff use a complete streets approach when resurfacing, and this includes considering bike facilities but does not include a lane reconfiguration. Staff is proposing to remove approximately 160 parking spaces from the south side of Pierce Road along the US 101 sound wall from Carlton Avenue to Del Norte Avenue. As part of this effort, staff conducted parking observations on 2 separate occasions and concluded there would be adequate parking on the north side of Pierce Road. Based on standard city parking dimensions, there's an estimated 110 parking spaces available on the north side of Pierce Road. And during parking observations, staff counted 15 and 23 parked cars on the north section and 13 and 25 parked cars on the south section on 2 different days, respectively. To staff recommendations, the Complete Streets Commission to recommend the installation of a no stopping zone on the south side of Pierce Road between Carlton Avenue and Del Norte Avenue to City Council. And next steps for this effort include in early 2026, City Council consideration of a no stopping zone. And also in early 2026, the 2026 resurfacing projects bid will be released, including Pierce Road. And within the summer of the same year, implementation of the resurfacing and striping of Pierce Road. And that concludes staff presentations on this proposed no stopping zone on Pierce Road. Thank you.
Are there any clarifying questions from the commission before I take public comment?
I have one. Hi, Cassandra. That was super speedy. My question is that I think you said summer of 2026. The recommendation is for the installation of no stopping on the south side, correct? South side? of the road?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
And also a bike facility. So 2 questions. I'm curious why staff or city generally refers to saying no stopping instead of no parking. Because I have had a couple residents say to me around Middle Avenue, why are there no stopping signs? Why doesn't it say no parking? And I'm just curious if there's a difference in staff's mind and when it applies and when it doesn't. I'm assuming you're talking about putting up signs that say no stopping.
There will be no signs as part of this effort
Oh.
on Pierce Road.
Okay. So
Traditionally, staff has also used no stopping zones along bike lanes too. So we don't see cars that are they aren't parked, but they're stopped. So for example, that would be
Okay.
like a DoorDash or an Uber, things of that
okay,
sort.
helpful. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. And so I'm sorry if there's no signage. How will they know that it's no stopping?
That smells so great.
Yes, I have.
So,
We'll talk about that.
Hi, Azalea Mitch, Public
Hi.
Works Director. If you observe, many sections in the city lack signage. Right? I think we can attest to that. Where we have bicycle facilities, it is illegal to stop, park, unless there's very short stopping, but it's technically illegal to park in the bicycle lane. And so that is enforceable. We've actually have been ticketing cars that are parking in the bicycle lane. So we technically do not need signage
I see. Okay.
to enforce that.
And so when we use the phrase bike facilities, we mean striping.
Yes, we mean a bicycle lane. Yes.
And in this case, it's a striping.
Yes, it's
where
the
there have been-
striping that would be a striping along the sound wall.
Okay.
Striping that would be striping in a bicycle lane.
Okay. I think that has answered my question. Thank you very much.
What class of bicycle lane is being contemplated? And just given that it sounds like there's not enough room to do the lane configuration, it sounds like it might not be a buffered lane, and it is an over 101 access road, for the overcrossing. So I wonder what's contemplated, short of the circulation study, which I understand would add a lot of time.
So that is correct. Reconfiguring a 2-lane road to a 1-lane road would be a larger circulation study. As part of this resurfacing effort, currently staff is looking into a Class 2 bike lane, not buffered, a standard Class 2, southbound towards Carlton Avenue, and then a Class 3 shared line with both people driving and people biking northbound towards Del Norte.
Is there an opportunity to add physical protection to this, just given that it's a fairly fast road with a 101 access without a buffer? It's a perfect example of what we were just talking about. Like that's not going to be safe for children to use, given the speeds on that road, unless there's some physical protection.
There will also be traffic calming devices there, including speed humps on Pierce Road. But right now it is a Class 2 standard bike lane. Also, Pierce Road is a narrower roadway, and we'll have that speed humps there to also reduce speeds.
There already are speed bumps, though, on Pierce Road, right? There's a few of them there.
Yes, there are. Yes. So, from a speed,
So why not add physical protection to the plan, though, just given that there's no room for a buffer and there's no lane reconfiguration?
so we are not adding, I know that this is a recurring, topic in terms of barriers, and we are in the process of analyzing and proposing criteria for which segments may be buffered. So we, and at this point, we don't have the ability to make sure that the bike lane remains clear of debris. So we are not proposing at this point in any of our installations to have barriers.
So it's the mini street sweeper issue again?
It's not just from an equipment perspective, but it's also from a maintenance perspective. You know, we have a contract to sweep all of our streets, and so it would require an analysis of the additional services that would be required for any installation with barriers.
That to me feels, oh, I realize we're not in the comment section, but like that needs to be a really high priority because the sanitation question to me is lives are not lost on the basis of the street sweeping question, but they are lost on the basis of collisions, and the protection of the road to me feels vastly more important than the sanitation, the recology productivity metrics. So
Ask a quick question for the bikers here. I guess we are getting to the feedback section, so let me hold. I'll hold on the recology on the debris question.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, my thing went away. So my question is the connectivity. So it's listed as connecting to 101 and the 101 Willow thing. How does this fit into the 101 Willow Road interchange bike facilities? Because there's like it runs up into the one-way, that's a one-way street. So anyway, I'm just curious how it interacts with 101, if it's going to get me to 101.
So the facilities on Pierce Road will connect to that pedestrian and bicycle overcrossing because it directly is adjacent to that overcrossing.
Okay.
Yeah, so it will connect. So if you see the label on there, we labeled it. So the overpass is right on the top of the image. We labeled it, so that goes over 101.
Oh, that's the bike bridge.
Yes, the
right?
bike bridge.
Oh,
Yes,
see,
correct.
so as I was reading it, the point of putting these bike lanes all along Pierce Road, I thought was to access the Willow 101 interchange, which is also being redone. Because otherwise, I see that it's a bike lane that parallels Newbridge, which is helpful because Newbridge is very narrow and there's just not room for all the things we want there. But I guess what confuses me is it's not, if you look at the triangle that is Bellhaven, Pierce Road, if you just are on Pierce Road, it just keeps taking you further away from most of the neighborhood. So it's not, I'm curious who's using that stretch of bike lane. And then the other question I have is the bike lanes are only on one side of the road. Is that correct also?
Correct. There isn't enough space for both sides.
Okay, so it's like Sharrow on the other side?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question. Can we go back to the parking counts on slide 5? So it looks like, okay. Well, so I was just wondering, how did you pick the south side to put the bike actual separated bike lane on rather than putting it on the north side, which takes you towards the Bellhaven Community Center? To Commissioner Seabrian's point, puts you closer into
The north side of Pierce Road, that parking is more frequently used compared to the south side of Pierce Road. And also the south side of Pierce Road would directly connect to that bike and ped bridge.
Okay. I'm just saying by your parking counts, they look about the same to me, north and south side, right? So, but that's fine. I see the point about being on the same side as the overcrossing. Okay, thank you.
My 2 questions. Will the one-way street still be coming or will this wrap it up?
So in terms of any circulation changes, we would really have to assess if the community wants us to have a larger circulation assessment. It would have to be broad. We did spend quite some time a few years ago working on the Bellhaven traffic calming project. So we did install traffic calming devices throughout the neighborhood. Whether there's a need to assess the circulation as a whole, we would have to see if there's a community interest in doing that. At this point, our goal was to take an opportunity with the resurfacing, improve bicycle connectivity. The north side is right along the sound wall. Even though the parking counts are similar, most folks, there's a Boys and Girls Club right there, and so there's just more activity on that side, hence our assessment as well. So in terms of a larger study, we would have to wait and see in terms of how this is used and the need for a larger assessment that would not only include peers, but a larger scope for the neighborhood.
Which kind of leads me to my second question. As far as the neighborhood and the community, have people weighed in? Have they been consulted? I know oftentimes the A-frames will go up when a thing's being talked about. Have those happened to the immediate neighborhood?
Yes, so we did. Our Councilmember Taylor has been meeting with the Bellhaven community group, the BHNA, Bellhaven Neighborhood Association. So there have been meetings. We went ahead and sent postcards to not just Pierce Road, but a wider radius of the neighborhood. And so there's been outreach. The feedback at the neighborhood meetings has been positive.
Okay. Are we, any further clarifying questions before I move to public comment?
Just one last one. What is the speed limit on this road? And is there an opportunity possibly to reduce the speed limit using the 85th percentile measure?
The road is already, the local road is at 25 miles per hour.
And do we know what the actual average speeds are? Has there been a speed study on this road?
We haven't done a speed study, but that's something that we can definitely do. We have the tools to do a desktop analysis.
Okay. If there are no more clarifying questions, Katrine, could you please call for public comment?
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please fill out a speaker card from the back table, bring it to the clerk's desk, and please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Having no one in queue for public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you, Katrine. Are there any further discussion from the commission?
I guess I'm curious whether there was any consideration to removing parking on this road completely. And I understand from some work I did with Kevin and Councilmember Taylor that during the Bellhaven traffic calming outreach, there was a general predilection to not want to remove car parking. But I'm just a little perplexed when I look at the number of spaces that are occupied. And by observation of the staff seems so low, and then it looks like there's only 12 annual overnight parking permits. I just wonder if that was considered, given that there's so low based on 110 spaces available on the north side. So, and also it references that there's additional parking capacity on side streets. The other reason I would ask about that is that I'm not as familiar with this road as other commissioners, but it says that it serves as a low volume and low speed alternative for local access. That makes me think, oh, that sounds like a great road to bike on, right? So all those things are adding up to me as, wait, could we think of this road as potentially a high usage bike road since the parking is not being utilized? It goes to all these civic institutions that families probably go to and others, Bellhaven Community Campus, Boys and Girls Club, Bellhaven School. And it also is low volume. So I'm just curious about that question.
So we didn't consider removing parking because even though the counts are low, there is use on the street. So we thought that with the opportunity here with resurfacing, that we can definitely install bicycle facilities on one side, assess how that goes. And like I said, there was quite a lot of effort a few years ago on traffic calming in general. Bellhaven does. We did install curb bulb outs. We installed speed
Yes.
humps.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of outreach throughout that effort, and that project was completed about a year ago.
Yeah.
So in this case, we didn't see the need to just do the entire street and to see how this works, and if the community is receptive to this and wants more bicycle facilities, then we can definitely engage on that and perhaps do a circulation study.
I guess I don't, maybe it's just my knowledge. I guess I just don't. Why would that require a circulation study? Because I understand that's a lot of work.
Right. So the transportation master plan proposed a one-way. And so that is what is in our TMP currently.
So when you, just for my own edification about the process, when you say the transportation master plan proposed it, does that mean that at some point staff proposed it and the city council signed off on it and it was put into the transportation master plan?
Yes, that was the process.
How
Yes.
long ago was that?
The TMP was in 2018. Is that the 2019?
Yeah, okay, 2018, 2019, yes.
So it was a multi-year effort.
Yeah, yeah. So I first of all, thank you. I should have said up right on the jump that I appreciate that this is a resurfacing project, that now you're looking at the complete street aspects of it. So thank you for doing that. I think that's great to use resurfacing for that opportunity. But strategically, I do think that it seems like a while ago that this was looked at. And I think I was more thinking about what could it be? Could it be a road? Could we encourage people to use this as a great biking road rather than look at what we thought about it, X many years ago? So that's my comment.
Okay, first off, I love bike lanes. I love bike lanes. I just know that they are near and dear to my heart. But I have to be I understand it's a resurfacing project, and we should put down paint for bike lanes if we have the opportunity to put down paint for bike lanes. So I'm going to say right off the bat that of course, but also there is a part of me that I am kind of asking why. I mean, I get why, but also realistically, most of Pierce Road is a bike lane that's going to be going away from all those civic services that they want to use. So when they get off that bike lane, that bike bridge, they're near the end of what we're putting bike lanes for. And when they get off the bike bridge to go to those civic centers, they'll be using the Sharrow side of the road. And then they get to use 4 blocks of the bike lane to get back on the bike bridge. If you come off the bike bridge, you can certainly take Pierce Road out to the farthest edge of our neighborhood, but you can't get to 101 because then there's a one-way street off of Willow. So it feels like it's solving a different problem about that space. And again, bike lanes are great, but we're not going to be putting up any protection. And my hunch is, given where it is and how low volume it gets, it's also not going to get any enforcement. And I don't understand with no signs and no enforcement. I've met our town. They don't mind parking on bike paint. I don't know how, and I don't like the idea of creating bike lanes and then just ignoring people parking in them, because I think that's already a problem. So that's really my biggest issue with it. I will 100% vote for bike lanes every day we want to put them out there. This one just feels odd.
If I may give you a bigger picture in terms of the projects that we've been working on in Bellhaven. We have a lot going on in terms of Safer Bay. You all know the draft environmental impact report is out. We have the Bellhaven traffic calming project that was recently completed. We have the Bellhaven Community Center. And so this is just another opportunity for us to help continue to build that connectivity. And in the absence of us not doing anything during resurfacing, we thought it would be a good add, and then continue to work with the community on additional improvements and needs that they identified. Because this is something that they were receptive to, not necessarily removing all of the parking. And like I said, we've been focusing on traffic calming. And you're right, it is not perfect. We also have been working with our police department on enforcement and vehicles parking on bicycle lanes. And so there is a focused effort. We're also going to be doing a lot on dumping, because there are a lot of concerns in Bellhaven on dumping. So there is a lot going on. And so this is not just one isolated effort, but it really is part of a lot of the projects that we have in the community, and our continued connection with the residents, and in our continued effort to address their needs.
Can I add one thing to the sort of wish list for it all? It does, I can't remember exactly what the configuration of the new 101 Willow thing was supposed to look like, but it would be really awesome if there was a way that bike lane from Pierce then connected right to 101. Because when I look at that triangle, that is a really logical parallel to take to Willow, even from the far side of Bellhaven. So I know I say the far side like it's 6 blocks, but anyway.
Yes, there are some jurisdictional boundaries in that triangle as well. So there's East Palo Alto. So it's not it's not a straightforward.
But on our side.
Yeah, but if you look at in terms of the connection, we will this summer be in construction on the landscaping project with the Transportation Authority. So there are some jurisdictional lines that go through there as well. So it's not. So we're doing what we can in terms of all the efforts that we have in the queue.
Thank you.
I would say, we have an opportunity with the resurfacing. Obviously, we should take it. And we shouldn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. If there's a deadline for the resurfacing, let's do what we can right now. I don't actually think the one-way street's a great idea. I think there's evidence that one-way streets have faster usage. The cars drive faster and it's better to constrain the lanes a little bit and make it narrower if that can reduce the speeds. I do think if you have the resources in-house to do the speed analysis, it might be worth doing that, to reduce the speed limit, possibly using the 85th percentile measure.
I just looked actually. So I did a spot check just now, and in the past, so for the month of October of 2025, it was 22 miles an hour was the 85th percentile. So I would say there was not speeding being captured in the speed data.
But to me, so definitely we should do this. But the bigger picture to me is that we need to have a mechanism to create more protected lanes. And if this is an example of some larger problem where we can't put in separated lanes anywhere in Menlo Park because of the maintenance and sanitation issues, we need to address that. Like San Francisco, South San Francisco, several of our neighboring communities have flexible delineators that can be accessed by sanitation. They drive over them, they can get to the garbage, they can do the cleaning, and we need to be investing in that. I think actually in the discussion, the Blake discussion, we heard about Recology driving over the flexible delineators that we have there, and that's kind of the solution that they improvise. So to me, like that's the bigger picture here, and we need to be investing in the plan that you mentioned, Ms. Mitch, to come up with a mechanism to create buffering where it's possible. And if we don't have that now, we need to be able to have that in the toolkit of safety improvements for the future. So by all means, we should eliminate the parking as much as we can, make this as good as we can with the resurfacing opportunity we have, but then think about the long term, like a road like this. If it's going to be kind of a bicycle boulevard, it should have more protections on it. Speed humps are not great bicycle infrastructure. They're very unpleasant to ride over. So like it does slow the cars, but if they cut across the entire width of the street, it's not actually, it's great. And I would look at roads like Castilleja Road in Palo Alto as a better example of kind of a bike boulevard. It still has parking, it still has cars on it, but it's traffic calmed. It uses all the measures that we have without a bike lane to create something that feels like a bike boulevard for access to Palo Alto High School. So that you know, I think that's the bigger picture, I think, that I would say. Castilleja Road, it's an access road to Palo Alto High School.
I would like to comment also that I think this is a great opportunity to get something down, which at least delineates space for bicyclists, because I think that's a great way to start the conversation about bicycles, basically, because you have this bike bridge and then it comes off into just a street where sometimes feels unwelcoming. And what I will say just anecdotally is that on Coleman, I have a coworker who lives on Coleman, and the bike lanes are in one direction and it's a share on the other direction. And my coworker never bikes, will never bike, but came up to me and she wanted the bike lane to go in the other direction as well, because she saw the benefits of not having to like wait behind all the children biking on Coleman. And so that was just immediately obvious to her as soon as the pilot went in. So I really like the idea of just like giving people examples of good starter bicycle infrastructure, at least, so that they can see what is possible. And not only on this road, but also just expanding it, because as we're kind of talking, you know, you look at this map and it really feels, it's really one side of Belhaven, which is not the commercial side. There's the kind of corner of Willow and Newbridge, which has some commercial activity. It's not the Belhaven Community Center, and it doesn't even connect those two, but just kind of starting to build out that network from the bike bridge and giving people access to all of those things. I just see it as an opportunity, but definitely a starter opportunity. Right? So my comment would really be to consider, I know that you were talking about having just gone through all of this work in Belhaven, but a single bike lane is not welcoming if it doesn't get you to your destination. So, but it's a start. So that's how I feel.
Should we make a motion? Because we're making a recommendation to City Council? Yeah.
I just wanted to add just one thing. If the comment on the speed humps from Commissioner Roscoff, if on Encinal in front of the school, there's bollards, kind of like protecting the bike lane right around the speed hump, and then there's no speed hump in the bike lane. If that could be implemented, just a small little change, that would be extremely welcoming, and it adds to the comfort and safety and enhances probably the usability of it, and hopefully more people would use it. Hopefully that's not too much of a dollars increase there, but yeah, overall, yeah, great work on this. I know you guys are putting all your efforts in, and it's a great presentation. We always want more, right? But this is a step forward, so thank you.
Okay, any further comments before I call for a motion? Would anybody like to make a motion to recommend, I guess, this installation? Commissioner Sebring? And Vice Chair Cole as the second? Oh, can you state your motion?
We need to hear your microphone.
Oh. I move, thanks. I move that we approve the resurfacing and striping modifications to provide bike facilities on Pierce Road with bike lanes and a no stopping zone on the south side of Pierce Road between Carlton Avenue and Del Norte Avenue.
Selling new speed humps?
So I don't know.
Yeah, we are grinding down. Yes,
Okay,
we're
that-
grinding down.
okay,
and-
okay.
yeah.
Do you want to add an amendment? Do you want to add a? Okay.
But I think you can just,
I second that motion and then you can add an
A
amendment.
like friendly amendment or
Yeah,
something?
then we can vote on the motion with the friendly amendment. Is that correct?
We missed what you are proposing. Apologize.
I was proposing, since we're getting rid of the speed humps, to not extend the speed humps all the way to the curb, to not have the speed hump in the bike lane and at Bullards, basically next to this speed hump as on Encinal, kind of. So, yeah, and then hopefully it's not a maintenance issue because it's, a couple feet or something like that.
So we understand our current standard detail does extend the speed hump into the lane. And so this would be a deviation from our standard detail.
And what kind of
And
approval would
we
you,
have.
what kind of
the-
approval
We
would you
have, so we have the, I think what we can do is we heard you all from, last year in terms of, we have a great program to present to you. This is the next item, right? In terms of just traffic calming, there are some challenges in terms of just the maintenance of our streets and safety. Debris, broken glass, no one ever wants to ride a bike through that. And those safety issues are real. I ride my bike every day, so I see them as well, right? So I think because this would be a deviation from our standard, and we see a lot of issues with vehicles going around because we have the openings in the speed humps for fire, right? That then you can actually avoid the speed hump if it doesn't extend all the way to the edge of the taper down to the edge of the curb. So this is where we try to balance try to make sure that the goal is to reduce speed, yet also facilitate emergency access by our vehicles. So that's a balancing that we have to work with.
So how do we adjust that for the modern trends in trying to improve people or incentivize people to use the bike lane more? We put it there and like I've seen it in more than one place where it's basically the speed hump stops at the bike lane and then there's two bollards right next to it so people won't drive around it. And there's still the gap for emergency vehicles and stuff like that. So can we have a waiver or some approval process to can this be a pilot? Can we test it out on this bit? It doesn't sound like there's a lot of traffic there. It's slow going.
There is a lot of debris, so that
Yeah.
is a challenge that that's why we have a lot of efforts going, focusing because we do have a challenge with debris and dumping.
So that's manually done? Is there a street sweeper that picks up that debris and things like that? Or like what?
It's both. It's the sweeper and large items where we have to go and pick them up.
Okay. And
So
how many
it's-
speed humps are we going to put in? Is it going to be?
Yeah, so you all, right, can agree on a recommendation. I think we have to just assess what we're struggling here in terms of what our standards or things that we should pilot going forward and what that means in terms of ensuring that areas stay clear of debris, that they're swept appropriately with the resources that we do have. So I think you all can decide how to vote. It is a recommendation. We would have to assess and figure out what then we recommend for award at City Council.
Okay.
Mr. Redding, it might be, just talking to you directly on what you pointed out. If I think I'm understanding Director Mitch, this particular road has a dumping problem? Okay.
Yes,
okay.
so we're working with our police department to try to assess ways to prevent dumping. We're also engaging with Recology on debris pickup days. So there's a real focused effort to address the dumping issues and the debris and so forth. So we're
Okay.
working on quite a few things.
Okay, I understand why you're proposing it. I mean, I when you said it was, when you said it was an Encinal, I remembered, I know what you're talking about. And I'm wondering if we look for another opportunity that's sort of similar to the Encinal, set up a very highly utilized area where there are a lot of kids, where, and maybe it is around a school. Maybe we look for something where we think the city council, it's going to be kept clean anyway. It's right at the crosswalk of the school, right? So that maybe city council would be more prone to approve a pilot. I don't know. I'm not trying to compromise as much as suggest maybe a way to do it, because I think you're right to want to pilot it. Okay.
Wouldn't, I don't know those bollards in the Encinal area. Are they flexi post type bollards that are designed to be driven over by the street sweepers and the
I don't.
garbage? Or are they fixed and
No,
not
I
drivable?
think they're fixed plastic ones, but
Flexible ones.
let's,
I think
I'm looking.
That might be
Oh, yeah.
a good approach to experiment with the flexi posts, similar to what we have on Blake Street. They have been run over.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
And-
that's the solution. The flexi posts cost $60 a piece. You know, that is, and if we only need a handful of them, they're still drivable, you know, by maintenance and
They're-
sanitation. You could keep the bike lane free of debris and do an experiment to see if it's possible to reduce the width of the speed hump there.
A point of clarification, though, once you ride over them, they don't come back.
Yeah.
So maintenance would have to go out and replace them
They're
every
not,
time.
they're not intended to be, they're flexible. They're not intended to be driven over.
There is a model of flexi post, though, that San Francisco uses them that are intentionally meant to be driven over by sanitation. South San Francisco has them. There's a handful of municipalities that have them I've seen.
or the
And then-
ones on Blake that are being run over by.
They're not
Yeah.
being run over on Blake, though. They could be if they needed to, but I don't, because we're not replacing them. So they're not being run over currently.
There was a comment by a community member saying they saw the Recology truck driving over them every day to get access.
They're
Which
not
is part of,
supposed to. They're not, they back into, they're not supposed to. The ones we're using are not intended to be, they break. And so then we have an issue with the post.
Like we
Yeah,
had the
so they're
broken
not
ones on
intended.
it seems
Woodland.
at least worth researching what these other municipalities are using though for drivable flexi posts that can still allow for maintenance.
Maybe it's something like the crossing, the Oak Avenue, Oak Knoll crossing that came up in the last meeting. Maybe it's something like that. There's a intersection improvement. Was it a raised crosswalk? I can't remember. That's going to happen near a school. Maybe that, I don't know. I was thinking like we could look potentially for another.
So
Yeah.
I think staff is making the point that including this in this project would add something beyond the existing resurfacing work planned, right? So that would include some sort of pilot study or plan. So I think I want to clarify that for this discussion. And if we're talking about maybe deciding somewhere around town, which might be a good opportunity to pilot this, then I think that's a separate discussion.
And I wonder if that's a discussion we could have, like, plan for and maybe have at some point, like, to maybe run some kind of pilot around. It just really is so uncomfortable as a cyclist to go over the.
Yeah.
We did get several comments on
Yeah.
after the Coleman speed bumps went in. We
Yeah.
did get several public comment
And-
emails about that.
And with the goal being for people to be comfortable and cajoled into biking to make it as comfortable as possible. Like, yeah, maybe this is something we could schedule.
Can I ask a question? So the Coleman speed humps are temporary. And they do feel very different than our permanent installations. So once we bring back that project to you all, it would be for permanent speed humps, which are much softer. Yeah.
I did a little bit of research. The Flex Stakes SM 7000 delineators are designed to spring back, suitable for bike lane buffers and flexible separation that are accessible. There's the rebounder flexible traffic delineator post is heavier. So there are models that are available that would not require maintenance if they were driven over once or twice. And that to me, these are all very low cost options. We're not talking about the whole road. However many speed humps are being contemplated, it's a handful of them to the left and to the right. And this does seem like a good opportunity to try this out, given that it's all going to be ground down and resurfaced anyway. The labor costs are already covered by that project. So I would vote for an amendment to build an Encinal style flexi post arrangement around a shorter version of the speed bumps here.
Well, Director Mitch said, we can add a recommendation and the staff can recommend the city council not to do it if people feel strongly, it might not pass, but people feel strongly about it.
I'm certainly open to adding that. So if I were to remake the motion, can I do that? We haven't voted for it yet.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
remake the
sure.
motion.
Okay, because that was like a while ago. All right, so I make a motion that we approve the installation of a no stopping zone on the south side of Pierce Road between Carlton Avenue and Del Norte Avenue, to include resurfacing and striping for bike facilities on the south side of the road. Yeah, is that? And if possible, we would be interested in some flexible bollards that could be street swept over and separate and not require the speed bump to go all the way into the bike lane, if possible.
Maybe we would like to pilot an approach that we've seen at Encinal School where speed bumps don't go all the way to the curb and there are several reboundable bollards that delineate the bike lane at that location.
There we go. Is there a second?
Oh, so sure.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Commissioner Rennie. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, all those in favor of this motion, this latest version of the motion?
Yes, the consideration of the. Okay. Put it out there.
Unanimous ayes.
What is that? Can we, what is that noise? Can everybody turn off their microphone for a second? Okay. Okay, well,
We'll go fast.
we will just, this will encourage us to not take too long. Okay, so I think we should just move on to the next item on the agenda. Recommend the Slow Streets program to City Council. So Katrine Maki, Senior Transportation Planner, will present this item. Katrine?
Yes, I will present. I need 1 second to get my screens ready. I did just restart the system. I don't think that helped. Can you? Man. And I can see on this screen, they're all muted. So. Is there what? No, because no one has permission to speak.
I think we will be taking a quick technical break.
And no one online will hear anything. We'll hear it. Okay, testing, testing.
See, there's never a win-win. Maybe, okay. Let's start.
Yeah, it's not happening. I love how it says it's a city council meeting. No, don't. So it's somebody sitting down. I didn't change anything.
Okay, so just bring it in as whole. Okay. Great, so you don't need these seconds. Do you need? I know. Yes, you go grab that.
It's like it's the 4th of July. We just have to pretend we're having a conversation during some fireworks. Just power through. Like,
Without.
yeah. Testing. Jason, if you can hear this, send Joanna a message. Okay, so he can hear us. So I can just speak really loud. Done. What? Yeah, because I muted the speakers. We might have to turn it back on. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Welcome back for item E4. The Slow Streets Program. So Katrine Maki, Senior Transportation Planner, will present this item.
Okay, we are ready to begin talking about the Slow Streets program. We will start with a background of where we've come and how we came here. We'll do an overview of the program, kind of what's different than the previous one, and then walk you through the process kind of step by step. Then we'll pause for clarifying questions. I think it's probably best to not interrupt me and wait for the clarifying questions because I probably will, hopefully will answer your question along the way. But if I know it's hard with the flow of things, if you keep notes and we'll go back to it. And then we can end with a recommendation. So in 2004, there was an adoption of the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program. And that existed up until 2020 when the program was put on pause. This pause happened during the pandemic due to workloads and the issues that came along with the pandemic, along with reduced roadway usage. And so it was paused at that time. And then in April of 2022, there was an effort to restart the program. There was a presentation to the CSC. They provided feedback. Then staff brought the program ideas in September of 2023 to City Council. And at that point, City Council did not restart the program. They provided their feedback. And it had to do with the Vision Zero action plan, which was adopted in 2024. And so the direction that came from City Council is kind of how we came here today with the Slow Streets program. So the direction from Council in 2023 was to come back after the Vision Zero action plan had been adopted, because there was detail within that would set the direction of how a future NTMP program would go. And they had specific feedback for refinement of what they wanted to see in a new program. And they wanted to see criteria and prioritization of sensitive populations. They wanted to see a focus on speed reduction and safety requests, that data-driven process. And then they knew that it was very time intensive for staff to run the neighborhood transportation management program. And so they wanted staff to address resource allocation for managing these requests and implementing projects. The NTMP required a neighborhood petition to begin any project. And it was identified by council that this was not providing equal access to all residents, because it really favored those that had the time and ability to organize and get that petition signed. And that wasn't providing equal access for all residents. Another limitation to the NTMP was that these projects were taking multiple years per project. So a petition would come in, and there would be multiple years before they could before staff could implement a project. So the overview of the Slow Streets program, as this would be the successor to the Neighborhood Transportation Management Program. The streets that residents can submit, we're only going to be looking at, staff will look at neighborhood streets, which are defined in the general plan as a neighborhood connector, a bicycle boulevard, and a local access street. So this program will not apply to more of our collectors in the neighborhood. Or really the focus is on local streets. And in the program, they're referred to as neighborhood streets. So that we can have these three classifications be collectively referred to as one thing. So the goal and the objectives of the program is to encourage safe speeds on neighborhood streets and maintain the neighborhood circulation by using the data-driven and an equitable approach to prioritize projects. Their main changes from what was the NTMP to the Slow Streets program is that the petition requirement is no longer part of the program. The review process is batched. So rather than looking at each project individually, we'll look at them all together and then score them using data about the volumes, the speeds. We'll go into the how the scoring is later on. So now I'm going to walk you through the process. Step one is to take that information from a resident. There will be an online form for a resident to fill out on the city's website to take in the information of the problem that they're seeing on the street and the specific segment that they're seeing that along. The staff will verify and follow up if more information or clarification is needed to help with that intake. And then we're going to have to review to make sure that this is an eligible street. So we're going to verify that it is one of those neighborhood streets as identified in the general plan circulation element. And then there will be, it won't just be, no, you don't apply, go away. You know, it won't end there. And so we do have a lot of other ways that we'll see this request come in, and staff could route these requests through, as you see, our list of other processes within the city. So if it's of a higher classification roadway, if it's one of our arterials, collectors, there's other avenues for a project suggestion to go through. If it's related to parking removal, we'll follow the process we do today that's within our municipal code. If it's other service requests, it might be able to be more applicable to be sent to our maintenance department of something that they can take care of. Then we will look at the data that we have about those street segments. So each project that is submitted will be evaluated and prioritized using a point-based system. And the goal of that is to help staff look at the list of submitted projects and understand where there's the biggest issues with safety on that street segment. And so points are assigned to each project based on speeds, history of collisions, traffic volumes, proximity to schools, parks, community destinations, and underserved communities. And this points-based system will put 1 point. So as we look up the 85th percentile, there'll be 1 point for every mile per hour that the speeds are observed over the speed limit. It'll be 2 points for every collision on the segment in the past 3 years. And it will be an injury collision. That for volume, it will be every, so we're gonna count the average of traffic on that street, and there every 500 above 750. So if there's 750 cars per day on that street, it would get a 0. But if it is above that, it gets 1 point for every 500 above that. Underserved community is simple. It's either in or out, 1 point or not. And the community activity center, either it's adjacent, this roadway is the segment of the project is adjacent to the community activity center, or it's not. So there is an emphasis on speed. If you think of this as what's likely to add up to a lot of points quickly is speeding. And we've done that on purpose. The numbers here are for a risk of death for bicycles or pedestrians, and this is coming from the US DOT. So someone walking or bicycling has a 10% risk of death at 23 miles an hour, and it's so much higher the faster a car is moving. And this is directly from our Vision Zero action plan. Speed plays a critical role in determining the likelihood of survival in a traffic collision. So therefore, speed is a fundamental factor in defining roadway safety. The graphic below the numbers just also emphasize that part of this is reaction time and how much, when you're going faster, how much longer it takes a car to stop. So this goes into the sample scoring. We have hypothetical streets here where you see, and specifically these streets are meant to give you an idea of how different streets within Menlo Park would score. And so if you look at each column, the first column, we've got streets that have no speeding, and we have streets that have speeding up to 30 miles an hour. And that's the 85th percentile observed speeds over a year are averaged out to 30 miles an hour on this roadway segment. And then if you look in the next column, this is your average daily traffic. So over a year, on average, every day, there's 1,300 cars on this street. And there's, almost double that on the street below. So there's far more cars traveling down that street, but they aren't going as fast. So you kind of have to, again, I think what's important to also think about is all of these in compilation. So if you have people that aren't speeding, and there's a lot of them, they're still not speeding. So that doesn't rank as high as someone where you have a lot of people and there's a lot of speeding happen at the same time. Collisions are there as well. And so then the next column is how the points begin to add up. So the 85th is kind of the second to 85th is, if you see there, is how many points have been added because it's 5 miles over the speed limit is 30. So that equals a score of 10 once you add in the points it gets for being above 750 for ADT. And in this hypothetical street, it's adjacent to a school, a park, community center, library. Think I covered, so, and just spend a moment to kind of digest some different scenarios. So, on the bottom, there's a fair amount of cars traveling on Street E, but no one's speeding and there haven't been any collisions. We'll move to that example next. So on the street with low speeds and no collisions, projects that have no points for speed or collisions are not going to be further evaluated or prioritized. We have streets that we've demonstrated that have high speeds and collisions that are going to rank above that. And then projects that are identified on an emergency route, this is also in the plan, and it's in our circulation element that as a map of where the emergency routes are in the city. They need further study and coordination with the fire department to make sure that we're putting in traffic calming that isn't going to introduce further delay for emergency response. Then, after we've gone through and we've created our scoring and we have our ranking, the selected project will proceed to the conceptual design phase. And that will be presented to the Complete Streets Commission for feedback, that conceptual design. And then following the Complete Streets meeting, the community input, staff will refine the project and design accordingly, and it will be implemented. There's a couple different avenues of how it could be implemented. We're definitely going to continue to take advantage of the street maintenance program. So if there's something already in the CIP where we know we're going to be resurfacing, we're going to look at that. If it's a smaller scale project that can be implemented within the limited design and resources that we have within the next year, there is a budget set aside in our CIP for this program. So there will be an ability to do a quick build project out of it. And then if it's a project that is just larger and more complex, that it goes beyond the budget we have for this program, it can be incorporated into the city's 5-year CIP. So an example of a larger or more complex project would be Coleman Avenue. Then, following the finalization and resource allocation, approved projects will proceed to construction or installation. So walking you through, there will be probably some concurrency of batches that go through. Once we go to implementation, we start evaluating in that next cycle, the next batch of projects to go through. And this moves to our recommendation that the Complete Streets Commission reconsider recommending the Slow Streets program that replaced the MTMP to City Council. I would love to answer your clarifying questions.
Are there any clarifying questions from the commission?
Oh, good.
Just going to ask, injury collisions, is that from police reports?
Yes, and it comes from the TIMS data set that comes out of Berkeley.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if there's a police report, and so I got hit by a car on Sandhill, and the police officer said they couldn't determine that I got hit, even though I got hit by the car.
Like, would it count as an injury collision?
Yeah. And then also I've been encountered where police will say they won't write a report, that it's a civil issue. And I'm very concerned about the reporting. I don't think it's valid at all unless there's mandatory reporting. And yeah, just sorry, I get like a little emotional about it. It was it was Palo Alto, but I've seen it on our side too, where it's like they just don't care. It's a civil issue, and that's what they say. And you have to push them really hard to even get a report. So if there's any work that could be done there, that would be much appreciated. I just don't think the data is correct, and we should find another avenue there if there could be to replace that, or because I don't think the point system is that might be skewed a little bit, but and then
I don't have a reliable alternative data set.
okay.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I can't use something like our the near miss.
Katrine, can you, so I think it'd be helpful to describe that these databases are used nationally, right? And there are official point of record, right, in terms of what collisions it is, what our Vision Zero action plan is based on. We work with our police department. Now, if there are gaps understanding the civil issue, I think we can have that conversation with them to obtain clarity on the limitations of the reporting. But it is the data set, it is right that we used for the Vision Zero. And so in that way, right, we're trying to also make sure that this is data driven. Now, if there are concerns with gaps, we can definitely have that conversation with police.
Great, thank you. And I brought that up too because a member of the public wrote to us and was bringing up those same things. Vision Zero is like, somebody died, so let's go fix it. And then the near misses isn't fully in line with that, but just wanted to point out the clarification. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Just the point system thing for the number of cars. Step increase. So as I look at it, I don't know why I'm like, we round up, right? So like that first row, unless my math is wrong, which is totally possible. I thought it would only be 1 point because it was only one set of 500 over 750. And then it was partway into the next bit. So I guess if it exceeds 1 but doesn't reach, then it's automatically in the next category?
Yes. You're saying, yeah. I made this into, oh, of course it didn't. Does this help? Because I even needed this while I was applying the scores. So if it falls within that range.
It's between, it's almost like what I would put something like this in the slow streets report just to make clear how that rounding error sort of goes, right? If you're over whatever that 500 car threshold is, you're automatically in the next tier.
Yeah, I can have the table. Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, so I guess that was my question for right now.
I have several clarifying questions. One question I have is you're batching the evaluations. Do you have like specified frequency for that evaluation, or is it just whenever you get to 10 streets or?
We're working backwards from our ability to implement at this point. So if we did them, I want to batch them in working backwards from my implementation. So I have a budget and we have the CIP, the resurfacing. And so we need to have our project identified with enough time to be included in that project. So as we work backwards, that's currently how we're looking at it. And our budget cycle is annual. And
Okay,
so,
the longest wait would probably be about a year.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
If I
Um,
can clarify in
yeah.
terms of the longest wait, if in terms of if you go back to the slide,
which one?
the one with the types of projects in terms of incorporation,
Implementation, yeah.
the implementation piece. So we have a few opportunities, different buckets. Our street maintenance plan is pretty important in us really looking ahead. We develop a plan for 5 years and we present that to council. Now, some street segments do change, but as we do the 5-year projection, right, these requests are coming in, will be coming in, and we'll have to assess the opportunity to program them. The time span, it will get a little bit challenging because for streets, oftentimes, we're basing on PCI, so sometimes we can't do an entire stretch. But we'll take a look at the opportunity to program them through our street maintenance plan. So it could be more than a year. If we say, oh, this street will be repaved in 2 years, for example, we'll program it then.
Okay.
And then, so we'll have to, that's why the frequency will depend on the opportunities, our budget, and the number of concerns that we receive.
Okay, thank you. I guess that's a question that just occurred to me. In your point scoring system, yeah, I understand the petition system is inequitable. So there's as it stands, there's no incorporation of like every single person on this street wants to do something. Okay. On this slide, you had a previous slide. One of the points is activity center. Distance from an activity center. Is that an established radius that you're considering, or is it like a walking time, or?
It's adjacency. So for a lot of them, I look at this, if you were to make a map and you were to talk about a certain distance from a school, so often you pick up streets that are completely discontiguous.
Mhm.
So as a bird flies, that doesn't help anyone.
Mhm.
And so in terms of this project directly impacting that community activity center, adjacency is a nice line to draw in the sand of either yes or no. Either it will help that facility or not. If it's across the street and around the corner, it might get a point, but it actually might not benefit that facility or the community activity center at all.
Okay, that makes sense. And also on here, you have the annual average daily traffic volume. I was wondering how that was measured for individual streets. Are you planning to measure it? Like if you get a request, just go out and measure the traffic volume for that? And also what typical numbers are for, like how many points is a typical slow street request going to get from this category? Is it 1 or is it 5?
I think this is a pretty representative sample.
Mhm.
From my high level review of like the projects that have already been submitted. You don't see a whole lot above the 2,600 on our local streets. So that's kind of example of that. There might be a little bit more, but that's kind of the limit. And they're the outliers. There's probably, of the streets I looked at, 5 to 10 that are really on that high end. In terms of the methods for gathering the data, we're using streetlight data, which is compiling lots of data points, and then that's being looked at from the window of an entire year and an average over that year. We are looking at Monday through Thursday, so during the week, which is generally a higher number than if you were to include the weekends.
Okay. And I have one more, which is you were discussing the complication with including the emergency routes. So if the requested street is an emergency route, you said that requires more coordination with the emergency services. Does that like remove it from the queue or change its prioritization in any way? Or is it just something that you're pointing out that you need to consider?
It more becomes of an offshoot, so it's not not in the queue of like a quick build or something like that for the slow streets process. It will be looked at separately than the other programming. Our goal was to streamline the process, and that's not something that can be sped up, so to speak.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
So we're talking. Okay. Hello. Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. I thought somewhere in the staff report it said that you're looking at collision data over the past 3 years, but then I couldn't find it. Is that correct? Is it 3 years?
3 years.
Okay. And I wondered are you just resetting from ground zero, or are you actually looking at people who submitted requests under the NTMP?
Yes, we have a list of backlog that we've been capturing them all that have been submitted since it was put on pause, and so those are automatically part of the first queue.
Okay, let me see if I understand that, because it was put on pause a while ago.
Yeah.
Right? So we're not looking at any submissions before it was put on pause, which is a while ago, right? But we're looking at submissions that came in since it was put on pause?
Correct. So
Ooh.
since 2000, we have a list
I'm
published
just
on the
worried
website.
about the backlog. I'm worried about the time staff will invest in the backlog when people are sending you, information or requests like in real time. I don't know. I'm not asking you to tell me exactly how many things in your backlog. I trust your judgment, but if it's a lot, I just question prioritizing or doing those first.
Because we're able to use the streetlight data and we're doing it in one batch, it's not as time intensive as it used to be.
Okay.
So the analysis can be run on multiple streets for the key data points of the 85th percentile of speeds and the amount of traffic. And then the staff will have to compile the collisions by hand. Like that is not automated like the other two. So that will be looking at the.
Okay. I mean, I guess
set.
I just think the older the data gets, the less reliable it is. And I mean, I do agree.
We will be, so we'll be, so they're old submissions, but we'll be looking at it from the past 3 years, not from when it was submitted, but from when the analysis is run, if that makes sense. So we wouldn't be looking at historical data, but still, we're just going to maybe for the benefit of the doubt, assume there's still a problem there and still check the data to see if anything reflects that there is a measured problem.
Absolutely good point. I understand that you're looking at current data. I just wonder. Yeah, that's fine. You've got your approach. I just was worried.
If I may add, the concerns. This is we have a list of safety concerns, right? That residents have reached out to us on. So we're seeing it as there's a concern on, speed. So that is the concern because we know there's speed correlates to a safety concern, and so we're taking at this point we have a long list of concerns that have been shared with us, and we'll then analyze the data that we have, the speed data, based on the average, the annual, and then in terms of collision, the 3 years. So it won't matter when the request was, or not the request, the concern was shared with us. Our job is to assess by analyzing the data if indeed there's a safety concern on the segment using
I see
the most
how you're
available
approaching it.
data.
I see how you're approaching it. I'm just thinking, and maybe I'm just thinking of edge cases, but like, okay, someone submitted a request 6 years ago about like North Lemon, but since then they put in speed bumps. So maybe that is, and only one person did, like maybe that's not as important as,
And ideally, we'll get back numbers that show there's not a lot of speeding and it's not the top echelon of volume and it will rank low and we won't have to worry about it again.
Okay. All right. Thank you for answering that question. My other question is, I think I'm a bit confused about the batches, evaluating in batches. Again, trust your judgment that you've come up with an approach that works. But from my own understanding, is it batched based on location, or what is it batched based on?
It's batched based on, so if I were to run it right now, it would be all the historical historical submissions and concerns that have been submitted to us. And so it's using the streetlight program. And so we're getting the numbers at the same time. So each geography, each roadway segment, we'd be looking at the exact same snapshot in time of when that volume is and when that speed is, and then comparing them against each other. Because we're looking for what ranks the highest as the place where we have limited time and resources. And so we need to see where we see the biggest safety concerns, where that budget will be applied. And so it's a batch in the sense they're kind of being compared against each other.
Okay. So one thought I had as I was here thinking about batching, just generally batching data, is that when we worked on the Vision Zero approach and then the city council approved it, et cetera, one of the big takeaways for me was that looking for systemic solutions to problems. So when we see common problems, instead of like solving it for Willow and then solving it for Middle, trying to get more out of the, work that you're investing by saying, oh, okay, well, across the city, there's 4 places where this is happening. Let's do the same thing in all 4 places. If we can, maybe there's some curb issues or something. But so I was wondering if the mindset of batching when you're evaluating resident input, sort of one aspect, but how about on the other end, which is batching solutions, and thinking, okay, wow, we're having an intersection issue or something about a crosswalk or something in 5 different places. Can we consider going to the city council and saying there's 5 different places in the city where we're seeing this issue and we're going to do it all at once across these 5 things? Just a thought. Because I do remember it coming up in Vision Zero, and I thought it was really an interesting approach. So, sorry, I don't know if that's a clarifying question, but I think the only other thing, sorry, I did have one more. If someone else wants to go, but let me just quickly glance. I guess I just want to flag that it didn't sound like there was a lot of budget. I know fiscal year 26 or whatever that's called is ending, right? But it didn't seem like there was a lot of you didn't have a big kitty, right? $100,000 or something to address.
But if I may, so we last through the fiscal year in July, we proposed adding this as a capital improvement project.
Great.
So it is in our CIP, and it's we have $100,000.
Yeah.
Now I have to clarify, right, that budget will likely be used for our quick build.
Yeah.
If we have a segment where we, based on the analysis, the recommended treatment are speed humps, they will be, we'll look at the opportunity to see if that can be done through street resurfacing. So that has a separate budget.
Oh, yeah.
So it is, but the timing has to be there. And so we'll be juggling to see if we have other projects that these improvements can be incorporated
into. Understood.
Yes.
Understood. I mean, I think that I would support you, and I would certainly go and make a comment during the budget process for city council. If you are literally removing the NTMP, right, and creating a whole different program, I would want to see, and I appreciate that you can incorporate it into other public works projects and use that budget, but I would want to see the council put some budget behind it, because you're creating a data-driven approach and you're accelerating the responsiveness for residents, and I think you want to complete that process by then implementing as quickly as you can. So that was one clarifying question I had, and just something I thought we should think about. And that is all that I have. Thank you.
I was just going to ask on the the streetlight data. I guess it's from mobile phones, right?
It's actually, when we received our training from Streetlight, they told us a lot of it comes from something in vehicles that's not a GPS. They called it like connected vehicles.
Oh,
And
okay.
they said it's not OnStar, but it's kind of like that. Like it's in all of our cars already.
Oh,
Is
okay.
what they were telling me. And so this is very much big data, like lots of data spots. It's not just phones.
So it's only cars.
No, well, I mean, cars, trucks, like,
Okay.
it's definitely not useful for transit. So, because we can't really capture that. And so
Okay.
that also is a testament. So we're not really using the phone data because that doesn't help.
It doesn't, okay.
Yeah.
And so is this kind of a newer standard to track VMT also? Or is that
It's
even?
a possible tool. I wouldn't call it a standard by
Okay.
any means.
Got it. Okay. And then, okay.
And in terms of doing VMT, you'd have to like select all the streets and add that number together. Like it doesn't
Okay.
capture it.
And this, basically the analysis that you're doing is on a subset of just neighborhood streets. So you're removing all the, I forget what the exact names are, but you're basically removing some of the streets and then you're only applying these to neighborhood streets for the most part.
And the analysis would be done on the project submitted by the community.
Okay. And how does the community submit that?
An online form is the goal. I'm
Okay.
sure we would also take input at the front desk on phone calls, emails, and compile it, to make it
Okay.
accessible to everyone. But there will be an online form, which I think would be the most common way for it to be used.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I have a couple more questions. One of when I was reading through the thing earlier, there was a bit in there and then a public comment that connected with it and I just didn't understand it. So like consistent with the primary design and legal function of streets and is not intended to create shared streets. What are shared streets?
So during COVID, there were a lot of municipalities that closed off streets, right? And not closed them to not all traffic, but just to retain the local traffic. And so it was an attempt to share the streets with the local vehicles, with pedestrians, with children playing. And that was a time where our county parks were closed. If you all remember, we had no space. So many municipalities went ahead and implemented slow streets programs with a different goal. So we just want to make sure that we clarify, because that was an effort that many cities implemented in terms of partially closing off streets so that folks could share the streets. And so this program is really focused on making sure that that our roads are as safe as possible, but it is not creating the programs that were developed during COVID.
Okay, so not exactly, but sort of like what we did with Blake. This program would not result in what happened on Blake. Okay.
Would not.
And then the other, and part of it is just understanding what stuff means. So the other part that sort of confused me was like maintaining efficient traffic flow and mobility access. And like, I guess I'm kind of curious, what exactly does mobility access mean?
That's like a trick question. Mobility access in terms of being able to move around the community. And I say that meaning all modes, knowing that it's not the same for everyone. But I think the goal there is also not to interrupt circulation. So as you brought up, Blake, this program will not involve the level of analysis needed to close a road. And if we needed to, that would slow everything down and it needs to be a separate project.
Okay, that would be a really slow street then. And then the last question I have is about the sample scoring sheet, Street E, only because it was up for a while and now I'm curious. Why is Street E 0 points?
That goes to our point in that if the project doesn't have the 85th percentile demonstrating excessive speed, so in this case, there's only the 85th percentile of cars. So 85% of cars traveling down that street are going 23 miles per hour or less.
Got it.
And
You
so
actually told us
that project does not have, so staff would interpret that as this street It doesn't have a demonstrated speeding problem. It also doesn't have a history of collisions that have been recorded onto the Safe Trek Berkeley TIMS program. So therefore, it doesn't get points for those two. We're not going to further evaluate or prioritize it. There's several other streets in the city that do get points for those, and
Got it. I feel like you probably did say that. and I
it's
just-
okay. It's confusing to yeah.
All right. That's really all my questions. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, I did have one more. I was in a sticky. Would you, maybe you mentioned this, but when you have your spreadsheet up and going with the ranking and all that, will it be posted on the website? I know you meet with the police regularly, is that something you'll be sharing just so they see like where your analysis has surfaced the biggest problems?
We think that that would be a great suggestion. Our goal is to come back to you all with projects and to show you the rankings, also to make sure the community knows that these meetings are being held so that there's input. And so, yes, we can definitely post the analyses, the findings. We'll have to be helpful to have the conversation with you all. Maybe first, let us think about the timing in terms of when. Yeah, but I think
Okay.
that's a great suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with no further clarifying questions, Katrine, could you call for public comment on this item?
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please fill out a speaker card at the back table, bring it to the clerk's desk, and please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. We have an online comment, so I'm gonna have to turn the speakers back on so that you can hear them.
Maybe the noise has stopped.
Okay. iPhone guest, you're allowed to speak.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear with the setup? This is Laura Mullen.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, awesome. Thanks for your guys' work on this. I know it's been a long time coming. I have a few questions and comments that I shared with the commission and also have now. One, I was wondering, following on the idea of filtering the streets, would it be possible to just get a list of all streets in Menlo Park and filter them on these things so we see the full list of eligible streets? And then my second comment from the conversation is just on streetlight data. I had looked up what drives it. So it's navigation apps, the OEM vehicle telematics, which is usually in newer vehicles, fleet GPS, and mobile SDKs. So my question on that is if we have Menlo Park's data set from radar tubes, and if we see a big difference in it, because I know on my street, the 85th percentile speed used to be 27, and last week it was reported at, or in the Blake Street conversation was reported at 20 a year later. So I think there's a big gap there, which gets into one of my comments on the program. I think that because the 85th percentile speed is such a hard gate on the program, I would love to understand where that data is coming from and how it's going to be transparently applied across the city. And just really quickly, my biggest thing I wanted to bring up about this whole program is it seems to skew us towards a reactive mindset versus preventative. You, by definition, have to have an injury crash already or have very high speed. And I think there are a lot of streets, others have commented as well, that have near misses or small collisions that don't get recorded. And I understand that using a big data set that's national is a useful way to filter things broadly. But I think when we're living in a community and we see these near misses all the time and we report them to the city and hundreds of residents come forward and say, hey, there's a dangerous situation here. When the big data says, oh, well, no one's gotten hit yet. That feels like a program that's not set up to necessarily take the preventative approach that I think we're hoping to achieve. I know I have 17 seconds. So the last thing I'll say is I know AB 43 allows cities to reduce the speed limit on neighborhood streets by 5 miles per hour for 20% of their streets. And I'm wondering if we can incorporate that into this plan. Thank you.
Stop. Having no one further in queue for public comment, I'll return the meeting to the chair. And I'm going to leave the speakers on while it's working. They just needed a rest.
Sounds good. Is there further discussion from the commission? Thank you for the public comment.
I had a few comments on this. This is really great. I'm so glad to see this program's coming back. And I think it's been in great demand among my own constituency. I get these kinds of requests. I forward them usually to you, Katrine, so you probably contributed to the backlog. I think I myself have contributed a fair number of them too. So thank you for bringing this back and creating this opportunity. One thing I would start with is the emphasis on speed is absolutely essential. And I think we should go even further than what's contemplated here. Is the data that you showed, Katrine, indicate that the risk of speed is nonlinear. It goes up in this, kind of logarithmic fashion, but the point system that we designed is linear. So we're getting one additional point for every mile per hour above the 85th. So what I would suggest is that we do a nonlinear point system that's correspondent to the risk that's associated with this, Vision Zero analysis of the danger of speed. So what if it were, 2 points for every mile per hour above 30, and then 3 points for every mile per hour above 35, and then 4 points for every mile per hour above? That would correspond more to the risk data that you showed, and I think it would really emphasize those streets that are like the one you pointed out, that are very high speed, maybe not necessarily high volume, but very high speed. Those are the really riskiest ones, from the data that you presented yourself. So I would go even further in terms of the emphasis on speed. In addition to the community activity centers, I think we should add in a metric on connectivity. Like that's been a big theme of the discussion tonight and many of the meetings previously. So, network connectivity is such a critical feature. Now we have an opportunity to build that into the prioritization system. Let's use that. So, of course, like being close to a community center, being close to a school is really important. But like if you're tapping into the Bay Trail, extra points. If you're tapping into the Grand Boulevard, future Grand Boulevard, extra points for that too. So that to me is something that we have not really had an opportunity to build that into our models, but many of these neighborhood streets actually play a pseudo collector role for cyclists, not necessarily for cars.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Because we would, if you think about it as a gap closure,
Exactly.
but we're scoring these projects before they've been designed. So staff wouldn't necessarily know if it's going to close the gap at the point of scoring. You could give it a point if there is a gap. You know what I mean?
I think we could do an analysis of where the gaps are, even if they haven't been designed, because people who use the streets know. It might be a little bit more subjective than the big data analysis lends itself to, but if you looked closely at the maps and you looked at like the Strava data, for example, of where cyclist heat maps actually are, you could probably find some objective measure of where people are actually riding, and without even with the streetlight data limitations for cars, for vehicles. So I don't know exactly right now how we would collect it, but to me, like some indication that some streets are strategic for the backbone. We just heard about the backbone of connectivity across the city. Like that should be reflected in the system alongside the community, centers, not instead of, but in addition to that.
I'm going to keep just treating this as like a discussion because I think I can clarify things faster if I.
Sure.
So these are on our neighborhood streets, which are not necessarily the streets that would get a bike lane. They are lowest
No.
volume, lowest. Okay.
I don't mean that they
Okay.
necessarily need a bike lane. I just mean like they need focus. So, if,
Okay.
Bay Laurel Street, for example, has hundreds of kids who ride on it. It doesn't need a bike lane.
Got it.
But
Okay.
it
was a misunderstanding.
There's,
Okay.
there's a missing stop sign on Cambridge Street, which is an access street for all of Allied Arts to get to the middle school and elementary school. And it's been deprioritized using the waiting, period, but it deserves some focus. So I wouldn't say bike lanes are the focus of this. I would say, this is Vision Zero. It's the holistic approach to traffic calming and safety. So Partridge Street is not advocating for a bike lane. They're advocating for traffic calming, bulb outs, that sort of thing. So
Understood. So then going back to the metric that you're proposing,
connectivity, yeah. However,
and the existence or lack of it, which one would get the point?
I have a thought,
Go-
just
yeah.
like an example, what I think you're talking about, so maybe you can clarify. So like the Ringwood Road, right where it dead ends into the bike bridge that crosses, it's also a spot that a lot of cars trying to avoid traffic on Bay Road use. And so let's say, for example, the people who live on that stretch of Ringwood were like, hey, we're getting a lot of cut-through traffic because of X, Y, and Z, and they would get an extra point because they're the drop off for a bike bridge, right? So in the looking at the data for that, it gets an extra point because it fits into the bike connectivity system and you're going to get more bikes down that road.
Mhm.
So that is what I think he's talking about.
yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I don't know exactly how you design the metric, but I think the facts on the ground of where people are actually improvising routes, like that is important and that deserves to be represented somehow in this data. I'm not exactly sure how you'd collect it other than the Strava data, which I know is imperfect. But then there's also the real connectors, like the bike bridge to Palo Alto, for example, which is known. And, that San Mateo is a very small road. It probably wouldn't qualify for very many points on the system. It's well below the 500 count, I'm sure, in terms of cars, but it's really important for cyclists and for pedestrians. So, yeah.
If we gave a point to the feeder, but we then let's say there's a hypothetical street that has a bike lane and there's still speeding and there's still collisions, that one wouldn't get a point because it has the bike lane. I feel like they might cancel each other out.
I need to think a little bit more about it. I can't do the analysis right now, but
maybe if it's hard to quantify, it's a layer like other factors to consider that goes on, it's a column on their spreadsheet. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just wondering, I'm listening to what Matthew's trying to do, and I'm just thinking that maybe there are, not to add another, but a layer of qualitative other factors to consider, but there's only 3 of them or something, right? And it's things like a connector, or what was the example you just gave, like a stop sign, like an actual single safety issue on a street that's glaring, it's just like, is that Cambridge and Arbor? Is that what you're talking about?
Cambridge and Princeton, I think.
And Princeton, yeah. So something where there's it's almost like a pothole. You know what I mean? It's like a glaring sort of omission, but it makes the street less safe. Doesn't have to do with speeding or whatever. There's just a lack of a thing that is normally a basic, requirement or whatever. So all I'm saying is that, maybe there's other factors to consider column and there's agreement among staff and that what those factors might be. That's all.
The first thing that stood out to me was the annual average daily traffic number. I would assume if it's higher and it's a neighborhood street, those were the ones that we would want to reduce. So because if it's slow enough, maybe they won't use it as a cut through. That was the first thing that stood out to me, because people are going to speed no matter what, unless there's traffic or speed bumps, right? So maybe a combination of two, because to the public comment, it's like, if you have kids and it's a neighborhood and that's what they kind of want, it's like, you just want less cars on your road, right? Because there's still people going to speed. Even I live in the Willows and it's like, there's not a lot of traffic, but every once in a while there's somebody going 50 miles an hour, you know? But I don't know if that's captured because it's not going to show up in this data whatsoever, but it would be nice if there could be some type of calming or something like that, if there was enough volume. But if the only thing we're focusing on is neighborhood streets and the rest will kind of get taken up in something else, that's kind of what stands out to me. If we're just talking about subsets of neighborhoods and that's what we're going to look at to refine it more, I do get the point of creating networks and stuff like that, but it doesn't sound like this is what that's focused on. This is kind of like you're looking at a segment, and that one segment you're trying to solve for, and it's based on car data, not anything else. But yeah, I'm sorry, that probably didn't add much to it, but that's, yeah, thanks.
I have a comment for another point that you might consider adding, which is actually an objective, I think, in my understanding at least, actually objective, which is proximity to a street resurfacing time, right? So if you're already planning to be working on that street, maybe the relative costs of that work will be lower. So you might bump that up in priority, even if some of these other things would point to it being less priority. I don't know how much you would weight it, but
I think the way the program is set, it's to rank, right? And so the ranking tells us there is a project that ranks the highest here because there really is a safety issue. Maybe that street won't be resurfaced for 10 years. Maybe the PCI is 70, so it's still okay. We want to make sure we don't lose sight of that. At the same time, the lower ranking projects where we do acknowledge that there's a safety issue and there's an opportunity within a year or two to program it, we'll program it. So I don't think we necessarily have to add another point because we'll be looking at the batching and then the recognition that there's a safety issue, right? That's the data-driven approach. We'll recommend the treatment based on that and then the programming. So
as we have the map of the street resurfacing, we have a checklist of things we're looking at. This will get added to that checklist of how did it score on the slow, or was it recommended by a community member? And is it in the Slow Streets program?
okay, I guess my point is, and I'm not saying this is like if you get a request within and you're going to resurface in the next 2 years, then like you should consider it, right? So there's probably some floor to that consideration in terms of this total points system. But yeah, just kind of making sure that things that would be easy to do, even if they score so low that you would not make it in, they would not be considered in this batch at any, under any of the programs that just not budget for it. Just making sure that those actually do get considered for the under the resurfacing umbrella. And I don't know if there's some formalized mechanism for that or if.
I think it folds into our standard practice. And so this would just complement, it would, it's just the confirmation based on this new program that indeed that improvement should be folded in. We already are, and so it would be confirmation, but it would keep the, I think, the ranking tells us the severity of things. It doesn't say no, unless we say it's 0, we don't see a safety issue. Otherwise, everything else, there's a safety concern, but this is helping us prioritize. But indeed, we would be just consistent with our approach on the street resurfacing.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to second, because I didn't comment earlier. I have written down here, how do you plan to incorporate network impacts? So that's just comments that somehow there should be some sort of, because we got an email about that today regarding like considerations into like the further broader network. Both in understanding how slowing the street down would improve like a safe network, but also understanding how slowing the street down would kind of impact the circulation network as well. So both of those, I think, are two sides of the same coin, and are not considered in these points. But
I feel like I just want to understand this really well. I'm not pushing back to be resistant or a pain. I just want to understand this network idea, because when I think of a bicycle network and we think about our trip origins and destinations, we all start from our house and go to our destination, and all these trips, if they're starting from home, are beginning on a local street. So every local street is a bike facility. So
yes. But okay, so right, closing Blake had a very, I don't know the numbers, but I assume it had a negative impact on the car circulation from one side of that street to the other side of the street, but it had a very positive impact on the walking and biking circulation there. And so, and I understand your point from earlier that you don't know what the improvement is going to be when you're doing the scoring. So I just wanted to, it is just something that I definitely think should be considered as part of this. I don't know how. So, but I just wanted to second our previous discussion because I didn't comment then.
I have a quick thought about that. I'm thinking of you guys as air traffic controllers, right? And information is coming at you. And so this is one way, this is one sort of intake form or intake approach, right? When information comes to you. But I think what I'm hearing people saying in different ways is that, what about different kinds of information? I mean, that's not exactly what Matthew and Athena are saying. They're saying more like, hey, can you, within your own framework you've created, can you give weight to this other thing? But so I'm making a slightly different point, which is, what about residents who want to report something that they think of as a safety concern, but it's not speeding and it's not collisions, right? And just like, where does that fit in? Because it strikes me that that's still important, right? So let's say maybe it's something like it goes through Public Works. Maybe Public Works already has like an app or a Fix-It or whatever, which is, I'm reporting missing or broken infrastructure, or something like that. A good example is like the crosswalk, the flashing beacon at Cotton and Middle sometimes just stops operating. And so what about that, right? Like, that's a safety thing. All of a sudden the yellow lights aren't flashing. You want to cross. It's very common for bikes and walkers to cross there. So, but that doesn't fit in with this, because that's more, I'm reporting an issue. So is there some way to communicate to the public, like, okay, if that's the lane that you're in, that's not necessarily, or maybe it's the way you're processing information, but like, that's still a valid piece of information. We're just not going to put it into this framework. But is there some response to that, and also some way to indicate to the public, when you want to tell us about that, go here,
So we spent a lot of time thinking about this is a roadmap, and the roads go to many places, right? The concerns that we receive at the local neighborhood level related to, we do receive a lot of concerns around vehicle speeds.
Right. Yep.
And you see what this program is based on.
Yes.
However, if there are other concerns that don't fit into this box, we receive them all the time.
Okay.
Right. We assess. We received an issue about just concerns at an intersection with visibility because there are multiple poles right at the corner. One pole just has a street light. The other pole is PG&E, and we can't move that. But we actually went out and assessed it. So it doesn't fit into this box, but it's still a concern.
Right.
And so so it isn't, but we need a process for this.
I totally understand. I think what I'm suggesting is, and maybe this isn't a problem, is for you to decide, right? But like, does the public know the best way to submit a concern about that to you? because that's also safety.
Oh, absolutely. I will say
And how to
we
fun-
receive many emails, regarding safety concerns.
Okay.
Some we are putting on the slow streets. Others require, a different type of analysis. But the example I just gave was indeed something that came through email and that we gathered and we went and observed. And
Yeah.
so we trimmed trees to improve the visibility.
Sure.
So we see what immediate actions can be taken.
Mhm.
And then if there is, a larger action that needs to be taken, then we have to assess the priority. So we have outside of what will be the Slow Streets program, we do have many other, list of concerns that are transportation related, drainage related.
Right.
And we try our best to address them and figure out the funding. So that will not, so the public can reach us, and they do, based on, with any concern, and we'll have to assess which program
Right,
then that
right.
falls into.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for discussing that with me. I think a second point, I'm really thinking as a result of this conversation, across different agenda items tonight. We had talked about on the commission, we talked about like a subcommittee or an initiative or something about mapping out a bike network to see where the gaps were. And I honestly think that we should reconsider pulling that back up because I do think that there are gaps, and a number of you have been really articulate in identifying what they are tonight, but I think mapping them out and making it really visual where they are would really help illustrate the need to fill them in and maybe prioritize that work. So I almost wonder, I'm sort of sitting here brainstorming, like, is there some sort of app that we can, provide, bicyclists and pedestrians in Menlo Park where they get to report gaps to, just to us or to something, and really mobilize people and energize people to help us identify where those gaps are. I think is a separate conversation, but somewhat related based on what we're talking about, and maybe like a worthy project for us. I like the idea of people being able to report to us this information because we may not see all the gaps that are present. So just a thought about sidewalk gaps and bike network gaps. Okay.
I'm really excited for the program to come. What I came in today wanting to discuss was the collision portion of the data collection. Wearing another hat, I do safe routes to school, and I spend a lot of time biking with people with non-formed prefrontal cortexes. And the amount of near misses that these kiddos have while we are doing bike buses, or just last week, one of my kids' friends ran out of Seminary Oaks Park onto the street, and 6 inches away from him, a Tesla just slammed the brakes. And the point being, I worry about the collision data and not having a capacity to include near misses, which I think we have a lot of. Just the amount that I see, and there's got to be infinitesimally more. I understand that we need to have the hard data points in order to inform the program. I know that through Berkeley, we have the Street Story program that allows citizens to report near misses or like infrastructure issues. But I wonder if there is a way to include that type of information, because I think it does need to inform. So much of it is just sheer dumb luck that a collision didn't happen. Does any municipality have the ability or like tracking the Street Story? Do we as a city keep an eye on the Street Story?
Well, I mean, sorry, Commissioner Bailey, but I'm kind of wondering, how do you think? I mean, you're the one who's saying you see these all the time. How do
Yeah.
you think near misses can be, converted into hard data?
I don't know. Part of it could be if people are reporting near misses on a street, like do a couple of near misses add up to like the equivalent of one collision, perhaps?
I don't know if it's that, but I mean, I think the key thing I think that you're pointing out is where we don't have access to the data around near misses. So how does it become data?
Can I ask,
Yeah.
can I add to this really quick?
Mhm.
Is there any, I don't even know the answer. I was trying to look it up. Is there, C-click fix?
Mhm.
I was, because I was thinking about, the thing about street stories is I have near misses sometimes
Mhm.
too. I have to remember when I get home to like, ooh, I got to report on that. And when I get home, like 6 other things happen and I don't report it. Right. But C-click fix, like you can stop, you can say, I'm right here. I don't have to like remember what intersection. And so I just wonder if one of the things C-click, like if it's possible to get it to capture whether it's connectivity issues that we're asking about or these near misses, I wonder if it's possible for that to be a collector of those things.
I do think it's gotta be an app. It just sounds like
Sorry, this just sounds like an app to me. Obviously, like in the moment, you're mobile, whether you're reporting road conditions, near misses, or this is where the sidewalk ends or the, bike network ends, it could be useful for a variety of things.
Right, like pothole, C-click fix already takes, there's some
Mhm.
stuff it already does. So I
Mhm.
guess I'm just wondering, is that a like an option that we can add on to our C-click fix?
And who runs that? Sorry, that's an independent app or is that like
We do. So we are,
Thank you.
so it's ACT. With the software is C-Click Fix. And so we use it primarily for maintenance because it integrates with our asset management program. And so it creates a work order to fix the issue. We do have, you can report a street light that's out. And then we work with police. They've got, there are enforcement, things categories that residents can report on. It is primarily a maintenance tool
Right.
because of the integration that we have with our asset management program.
Mhm.
So let us think about then, if I think the challenge with near misses is the cost, right? Could be a distracted driver on a cell phone, right? Or it's just hard to understand the why, and to then assess whether there's an engineering solution to that. We don't
More
know.
an
We've
education. Right. Okay, that's interesting.
I think it would mostly be if a cluster of them show up, then we can assume either there's something that's distracting all the drivers, right? But so it wouldn't just be 1 or 2, and which still gets us back to the reactive issue because you're still looking for a collection of, wow, we've seen like 10 near misses on this street. It's mostly just as I'm thinking of what makes it easiest. And frankly, that thing on my phone that already knows where I am, like, point here, this is where the problem was. And it just makes it so much easier for people to share information in that way really quickly, which gives you an overwhelming pool of data.
And maybe that then triggers a video collection study, which is, a more objective measure where you could use the AI, video analysis to do the time to collision, the post-encroachment time, like the more objective measures at an intersection, just to trigger the closer analysis of an intersection before you immediately prioritize it. Maybe step 1 is the community collection, the C-click fix. I like that idea. Step 2 is the analysis, and then you get the point if it's confirmed objectively and also subjectively.
I think takes me back to, does the city look at the street story, like to look for like maybe these clusters of near misses that then maybe trigger something more objective or quantifiable?
As staff, we look at it, but we can't look at it. I looked it like when we look at and there isn't anything, staff can't assume that there isn't anything there. So the absence of the data doesn't tell us that it's safe. That's the hard. It's really hard to use objectively.
And I hear Commissioner Seabreen's point as well, that I'm sure they're underreported as well. I would love it if we could at least think about that. Like, I don't have a clear solution, but just working with kids so much and just seeing so many near misses just does have me kind of concerned that we don't have a way to figure that in. And then slightly on a different tangent, but still about collisions, we also had a Laurel student hit a couple of years ago who, I think I've rendered this story before to this body, but was embarrassed, didn't tell anybody. Like, it finally came out, I think, like maybe the next day when he was talking to the school nurse. And then Kevin's story was horrific about being discounted and dismissed after being hit by a car. So to your point, I think, Ms. Mitch, you said that you could emphasize to our local PD that we do need to have reports come out of that. And I think just acknowledging that there is a strong potential for underreporting of collisions as well, just overall.
Again, I think I'd really recommend everyone think about how to make it as easy as possible. And also based on the population that's the victim of near misses, right? So for example, that's why I'm thinking app, but also if it's happening around schools and it's happening to students. My kid was in Oak Knoll, my kid was in Hillview, like, go to the office before you go to class, right? And like write on a clipboard, a near miss clipboard. I had a near miss, here's where it was, here's what happened. And then pick up a slip that says I'm 5 minutes late to class because I reported a near miss. Like, I think we have to start thinking about like the easy solutions that work for the people who we'd like to have report these, and I think that's where, and it could be a pilot, we could talk to maybe Oak Knoll or something and say, would you be willing to do a pilot at the front desk of reporting near misses and encouraging kids to do that or something? I don't know. It's just, I do agree that it is a tough thing to not have more data around. Yeah.
Well, it's like mulling it over as you're talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe Safe Routes, subcommittee can help take that on. Anyway, just a thought. I think that, obviously Commissioner Bailey's bringing up a good point. A number of other people have talked about near misses, but I think we have to kind of try to move to, trying solutions to it. Unless you're aware of a city that's nearby or a neighboring city that's really mastered this. I'm not aware of that, but okay.
I was just going to ask, I know Palo Alto does this, but like a city standard for the speed limit, like 25 miles an hour as a starting point, is that possible? I don't know what the current regulations are, but.
So you're saying the standard speed limit on local streets is 25 miles an hour.
Yep.
That doesn't come from the city, that comes from the California Vehicle Code. So it's a statewide prima facie speed limit is it's talked about in and the prima facie is referred to as also as like, that's the assumed. So if you have a local street and it's not posted, but drivers know that it's 25 miles an hour.
Oh, okay. So when it was a couple of years ago when Palo Alto came out and they said the citywide speed limit's 25, and that unless otherwise stated, is that true for everything, even like on Middlefield and stuff? Because that's not a neighborhood
Yes,
street.
it's kind of weird that they said that because they didn't need to.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay.
Yeah, because that's just everywhere.
It's okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you for that. Thought I had one more thing here, but that's it. No, thanks. That was.
I just have a question of clarification for Commissioner Rennie. Where was it, in Palo Alto or Menlo Park, where you said someone said they didn't want to report it because it was a civil case?
I think it was Menlo Park. My neighbor told me that after I told him the story when I got hit. He said, yeah, the police officer said it was a civil issue that he wasn't going to write a report unless he got pressed about it. And my neighbor said, okay, don't worry about it. And there was other instances, like my daughter rides with another kid in the Willows neighborhood. A car bumped my daughter's friend, didn't call the parents or anything like that, just wrote their phone number and gave it to her and said, if everything's okay, or if there's an issue, just call me. Like, it's just like ridiculous. I'm sorry, but it's just, I see this stuff all the time. Like, I ride all the time and I get hit and I'm like literally hitting on a car because I'm getting hit. It's just like a whole nother level.
Mm-hmm.
But even with, anyways, I won't go down the whole thing, but yeah, anyways.
Well, you're telling a personal stories about this experience, which is important.
We can, we have, we meet with our police department. We have separate, different meetings, but monthly. So we will assess, the differences. I know my son got hit on Coleman, and there was a report that was written. So we'll dig into clarifying when a report is written and when an officer can make the call that it's, that it shouldn't.
Thank you. And I was just going to say the act or the click fix type of thing. If we could do those types of things, because I went crazy with that, and that's like super easy and helpful. And it's like when you put in, previously as somebody from the public, I had no clue what it was for. And I would put basically everything there and put way too much stuff. And I would get replies basically saying, just call the police. And it was like past the fact. So if there could be clarifying things, but that app is totally great. And if it could, I know there's limited resources and things like that, but that's for sure what people are starting to use. And I get asked a lot. It's like, who should I write? Who should I tell? And most people just write their city council person or all the city council, and then the city council, what are they going to do with it? Nothing. Or they forward it on to you guys. I don't think it should be more streamlined and standardized somehow. I know resources are challenging, but
Yeah, I know.
maybe long term.
That's what I was trying to say earlier about like intake is like, yeah, a lot of people just write CC inbox, but it's a tree, like it's this kind of problem, report it, click here. It's this type of problem, click here. Like maybe I can help you all with this, or we can talk about it in the future, but maybe there's some sort of really visible framework on the website that could be helpful.
I've been doing a little hunting just while we're talking, and there are some video databases for transportation planners to quantify near misses. I ride with like a cycling cam, and I can upload video. I've just been experimenting with it recently. There's one called upride.cc,
Oh, cool.
and cyclistvideoevidence.com. So you'd have to look more closely at these, but these are validated. Like there's models that are being used to validate them, and obviously you wouldn't allocate the full $100,000 on the basis of a single video, but just as a starting point to then do further analysis, I think it might be worth considering some of these alternative sources. And you should get a
Maybe
camera as well if you're getting hit all the time too. I've never been hit.
I mean, maybe send that around to us and the staff, like the thing about the, what's it called, the bollards as well.
Yeah, sure.
Because you did better research than I did. I went online, but I didn't find that. Okay.
I just would like to comment on Commissioner Raskoff's comments. Sorry, but I just want to point out the equity sort of aspect to this, and relying too much on things on data sources where you get your really avid site. Like I don't have Strava. I don't bike with Strava, for example. I don't consider that like an avid bike thing, but like there are a lot of people who don't have that, and so that would probably bias the data somehow, and having this video type thing might also do that. So that's just my first reaction to that. It's better than nothing probably, but and I don't know, the public commenter mentioned that the vehicle data from Streetlight was also from newer cars. Can we just at some point, could that be verified to be true or not true? Because if it is from like newer cars, then you might get I don't know, maybe neighborhood biases in that. Just
what was the commenter saying? I don't think I heard that.
I thought that she said that the Streetlight data source was not all vehicles, but was in fact just newer vehicles.
And that makes sense. Like a 20-year-old vehicle.
Yeah.
I did ask this. The staff had a training, and this question was asked, and we were assured that we could verify what date this technology was implemented into cars. And
it's just
communicate.
Some people are gonna have newer cars than other people,
and that would be communicated when the prioritization ranking. So when this gets presented, staff would create a report that would accompany it, digging into the data sources.
That'd be helpful. Thank you. All right, would anyone like to make a motion to recommend or not recommend this program to City Council? Did you raise your hand? No. Oh, still, sorry.
I will,
No, you go ahead.
I will recommend that we, oh my gosh, help me. That we recommend this program to the city council. Oh, yeah, that was it. Okay. I would like to recommend the Slow Streets program to city council. I would like to make a motion to recommend it is past 10 o'clock. I would like to make a motion to recommend the Slow Streets program to city council. It's not on the piece of paper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's gone.
Sorry.
I'll second.
All those.
Before we vote, though, would it be possible to ask for some of those revisions that we talked about, like the point system revisions because if we recommend it to city council, it'll just go right to them in the current format. But it sounded like there was some traction for rethinking this network connectivity concept, building in points for speed that grow in a nonlinear fashion alongside the risk.
I think we could consider those as an amendment, not the motion.
I think you just start the motion over again.
Okay.
Okay.
Because you haven't voted.
Okay. Go ahead. I mean, there's nothing.
Matthew, whisper at me as I do this, please. I would like to make a motion to recommend the Slow Streets program to city council with the additions of considering connectivity,
And a point system
and the point system.
that revises, that adds additional points in, in a format that corresponds to the risk that's associated with the extra speed. So not just an additional point per mile per hour,
Nonlinear.
but more points that are added as the speed grows corresponding to the risk. So you can kind of do the math for what the best way to describe that might be. Sorry, this is not in motion type language.
In
but-
with consideration of the point system dealing with the speed in a nonlinear fashion.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question of clarification
Exactly.
about the
Exactly.
motion and the process, which is, okay, so I think if we vote for a motion that includes that, adding a point for the attribute of connectivity, then I think the people voting for that are saying, I wouldn't approve this without that. Right? I wouldn't be satisfied by just approving the program as presented. So I wonder, and is that what we want to be doing? Or do we want to say one motion is, hey, sorry, I'm pretty tired too. We want to recommend the program as presented. And then there's maybe a second vote on, we want to,
I think you
with
can
its amendment or something.
work to make sure you have consensus for those amendments prior to making the motion. So I looked this up before because we've come into this a couple times,
Mhm.
but making sure everyone has consensus around the motion before you make the motion.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
No, I think,
Yeah.
I think the question is whether or not, right, if, like, can we it was sort of two independent things here where we recommend consideration of these changes, but you guys don't have to come back to us and ask again if.
Well, and we
if
have the
those can't be
recommendations in the
incorporated.
minutes. They don't necessarily have to be part of the motion.
That was going to be my question. Like, can we also, as we have discussed tonight with multiple recommendations, can we just leave that with you, but still kind of make the motion in the shorter way, kind of more as written? And still just depend on you guys to.
I think where we want majority support on the recommendations. That is key because you all act as a body. What we have done in the past is, the recommendation for having this adopted by council with the following feedback. We need time to assess, what these recommendations will do. Maybe just on thinking very broadly, it seems like in terms of speed, right? Because we spent time figuring out, we didn't want to be biased on the point system. So we spent quite some time figuring out, okay, is this the right weight? So we'll just run through the scenarios to make sure we're not skewing things. And all of a sudden we see, like two groups, the really, really high and maybe the really low. We'll play around with that. And so part of it is recommendations, consensus. We'll analyze them, and then we'll report to council that indeed this was recommended by the Complete Streets Commission. We modified based on, an analysis of the data, and, we're proposing we're incorporating these into the plan. Now, if there's something that doesn't quite then work well, we'll explain that to council as well.
So, how would something somewhat vaguer, such as consider network connectivity?
That is a hard one. I think that was a great example provided, but I'm just thinking about how that would be applied
That's why I
broadly.
pushed back I wasn't pushing back, but that's why I asked so many clarifying questions, because it's hard to apply consistently.
But if
to-
we were to give the recommendation to approve with consideration for this, would that also be taken into the city council as we considered this and were unable to implement it?
Yes,
or
that's
something?
exactly how we've taken projects to council. Yes.
Okay.
Either there is great, everything, the feedback is clear, it can be incorporated. If we see challenges, we'll explain why. Mhm.
If we think the network connectivity, measure is too hard to quantify, maybe we could just revise the community activity center measure to include Caltrain transit hubs in addition to community centers. I don't know, and draw, an agreeable radius around all of those places. Add in anything that's been designated as a network, route, either in the general plan, the bike pedestrian plan, the safe routes to school plan, anything that's, on one of our existing maps. We could include that. Anything that plays a role in crossing barriers, like the 101 crossings under and over Caltrain crossings, all of those. And anything that serves as a choke point, like my example is the San Mateo bike bridge, which is, hundreds of cyclists crossing every, day in both directions, but would definitely not show up on streetlight because not very few cars, no cars use it. It's a dead end for cars. But so those are four easily measurable indicators that if it's a choke point, it doesn't have an alternative route, you have to go that way. Each of those could get points in addition to the community center point.
Could you clarify on the San Mateo Bridge, then what would be the safety? So with that example, with low volume street, a bike ped bridge, what would the safety concern?
It doesn't necessarily have a safety concern. It would have a lot of points, so if there were a safety, it would show up high on the analysis of, a street that's worthy of consideration and, high up in this analysis. So if this is only one of the point measures, right? It would be high network connectivity, but it would be low in the other indicators, very few injuries probably. So the overall number may not be that high, but it is very important.
Kind of like Street C. So it's near an underserved community, it's near an activity center, but it doesn't have speeding or collisions.
Doesn't have exactly. It might have collisions. I don't know.
Well, it has collisions, but it doesn't have, yeah.
Yeah, but there are other streets that have those choke point qualities to them that might have higher, numbers on the other ones. I'm just focusing in on this connectivity issue and trying to come up with a measurable metric for connectivity, not an overall change.
I think might be struggling with the same thing Director Mitch is, which is I think the point of this system is safety and improving safety. And when you add the point for connectivity, it feels to me like it's changing the goal and confusing it, and maybe even taking away from safety. Because what if that gets an extra point, but something that's pretty unsafe doesn't get that extra point, then it gets prioritized. So I'm not for it.
I don't mean that not to focus on safety is the issue. What we're looking for, though, is an indication of which streets deserve the highest priority in making safety improvements. So where a safety improvement is in question and we have to make trade-offs between Street A and Street B, what are the indicators that we're going to use to decide which?
So you're already assuming that the street that you want to add a point for connectivity to has safety issues?
No, it may or may not. We're
Well,
trying to
if
do an
it does have
analysis.
safety issues, I don't think it should be prioritized in this ranking.
Well, I think
that-
if it doesn't have any collisions or
It'll be low on those
85th
other things.
percentile, it doesn't meet this, then it gets kicked
Exactly.
out.
Then it won't be
anyway.
high. It'll be kicked out
Right.
for other reasons. But we're talking about as a batch processing method to look at basically every street in the city at this point. And I do think network connectivity should elevate a street relative to another street that doesn't play a network role. Katrina, you were asking, like, isn't every street
Well,
a
and
connector?
I want to be clear with it. Is it the lack of network connectivity that we're looking at?
No, it's the critical network connectivity. If it plays an important role, like the San Mateo Bike Bridge plays an important network connectivity role that connects, hundreds of people to get to the Stanford campus every
So
day.
with or without a facility?
With or without a facility, it's an important connector. May not have a lot of injuries, but it's very
So
high on network.
I think I think the activity center parallel is very apt here, right? Like whether or not, like however people are getting to the library, right? It's a place where we want there to be a lot of like safety and maybe prioritize it over other things because it's such a community center. And in that sense, having a high network choke point would also be a kind of place where we want because this is car volume. Is that what you're saying? Because this is car volume that doesn't incorporate the bike volume and pedestrian
Exactly.
volume, which might have otherwise pushed this into a higher safety category.
Yeah, I thought
I
the
think I'm
reason
trying to
that
clarify.
activity centers were factored in is because they were vulnerable populations.
And they're published in our general plan. So it's also a set approved map of activity centers that have been vetted and already listed in the general plan.
Is this, oh my God, it just went right out of my head. I'll be back in a minute. I'm so sorry. That's so funny. Oh, it's if your street you're concerned about is like already part of a school bike safety route, I guess that would be a kind of thing that might be worth a point. It's not by a school, but it's already like connected to or part of a designated school bike safety route.
Exactly.
And so I would think that would be worth. So it's that kind of like, it's like an activity center or it's already like, it's that sort of enhanced. But I
Our
don't know,
current
maybe.
safe routes maps indicate where there's bike facilities and sidewalks and not bike facilities and not sidewalks. We don't have a layer that I can say this is a bike safety route. Yes or no?
The school district has that. Each of the schools publishes that. Mhm. Exactly.
So I'm sorry, are we using the term next to a connectivity place as a proxy for high usage by bikes and pedestrians?
Vulnerable population. I think you hit it on the head before. It's, yeah.
Well,
Proximity
I think
to
the
vulnerable.
activity center example is factored in because my impression from the staff report is that it was near, it's where vulnerable populations might congregate, whether that's a park like kids or a senior center like seniors.
Yep.
So I'm trying to understand if the point that Matthew's making is that it's important to give a point to something that's adjacent or leads to or whatever connectivity or closes a gap or is part of the connectivity network, like, because it's high usage by bikes and peds.
High usage with few alternatives. That's how I define a choke point.
Yeah, I don't, again, I'm just at the point where I don't, whatever the motion is, if the motion, we're saying the council is recommending that we include a point for that, I would not agree to it. I wouldn't support that because I just feel like this is complicating a model that is very clearly targeting safety, and I'm not hearing that it deserves a point for being less safe. So that's what I'm not getting, and I'm done. I don't feel like I can think about it anymore. I've thought about it every which way I can. So that's where I am. If your suggestion to us as a deliberative body is that we express what the majority is or how people are viewing before we vote on motion, I think I've been able to do that.
Could I suggest maybe we just ask the staff to do one more round of analysis and come back with a revised point system, and then we vote on this in our next meeting? The program's been on hold for a couple of years. We're talking about one more month. Would there be a consensus for that? The points to me is like that's the heart of this program, and getting it right kind of represents our values. I'm not sure I would want to vote on this until I had clarity, not just a recommendation, but like what the actual points are going to be, because I think we need to be able to defend that.
I would personally not support that. That's what I will say. But I guess
You wouldn't support waiting.
wouldn't support waiting. I think this is if we have feedback on the recommendation, we can put that to city council,
Mhm.
is how I would phrase it.
Can I ask what would staff's reaction be to coming back in a month with having kind of taken all this in consideration, looked at the score sheet?
I think you've all have provided valuable feedback. We were committed to bringing this to council late last year, and I would really like to keep moving. I think we're there. I think you all have highlighted, we are struggling with this connectivity. This is focused on local roads. We do have our transportation master plan that lays out the gaps where we have bicycle infrastructure. Now, as it relates to safety on corridors that are more heavily used by bicyclists and pedestrians, I feel that may be different. And it doesn't mean that a safety issue on a corridor would not be ranked. And so I'm struggling with then modifying or adding a different layer based on just the work and the time we spent coming up with this process. And once again, it's a program focused on local neighborhood roads. Now, if we see issues that are safety related, that are outside of this, this department doesn't have a closed door, except we do push back on a few little things, and we can explain why, because we are seeing the big picture in terms of juggling maintenance, capital, public works, we're a beast. But if we see safety concerns related to other aspects, there's a path for those. This is really focused on slowing vehicles down on our local roads. So I would ask that we keep moving, and if there are comments made at council, we'll definitely but we need consensus here to then put in our staff report what recommendations you're all focusing on.
I mean, I guess I just asked the folks who are supportive of putting adding a point in the point system for network connectivity. Is there another way to recommend that the staff consider that and take and look at network connectivity when they're thinking about which project to take on next? That doesn't necessarily involve adding a point into the system, into your calculus, because seems like that piece has some sort of holistic integrity that I've obviously thought about for a long time. And I don't, and I obviously have said that I don't agree with adding the point. So I'm just trying to see if there's, like I had suggested earlier, could there be like other factors to consider? And we're recommending to the staff that that's a factor we think is important and we'd like you to consider. But we're
If there's
okay about keeping
consensus
this
on that,
intact.
then we can go back and try to address how that can be incorporated and lay that out for council.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that seems reasonable, but that's my opinion. I don't know how other people feel about that, but I think that's fair. You'll
just,
tell council it's important to us and you'll you'll bring ideas to them about how you would incorporate it into your thinking.
I think one thing that's missing from the analysis though is that neighborhood roads are connector roads for non-drivers. Like Woodland Avenue is not considered an arterial. It's not, it would never show up on any of the, the big plans, the vehicle miles traveled, but it's really important for cyclists to, cross the city. Creek Drive, similar, it counts as a neighborhood road, low VMT, but a lot of cyclists use it to navigate. That to me it's kind of missing from this analysis because we're using the streetlight data, which only counts cars. And we're using the speed data, which only counts cars. Like that's missing here.
But if we're solving a safety issue caused by the cars.
Yeah.
You can have safety issues that are not just caused by cars though. Like your example of like the one car that goes 50 miles an hour, like that's not showing up in the averages, but that can still be really dangerous. It can be very high stress. Like it's not just the averages, you know what I mean? And there's a design question that goes beyond just what the averages of total numbers of cars.
If it is one car that is not enough to change the averages, then there are probably locations in the city which require more urgent attention, right?
It could be a design issue though. If you have a neighborhood street that you can drive 50 miles per hour on, that's a design flaw in the street. It's not.
I 100% agree with you on that. I'm just saying that there are probably also streets which are designed similarly, where you have more cars going 50 miles an hour, and they are actually
By all
picking
means,
averages up.
those should get some extra points for having high traffic on them.
Mhm.
All I'm saying is that's not the only consideration. There should be an additional consideration for a street like Woodland, which plays an important role for cyclists crossing the city. And, it happens to be a very curvy street. It may not be, a big safe. I haven't looked up the numbers for Safe Track on that one.
Well, hold on. I mean, what if the phrasing is that we recommend, I really want to understand and reflect a viewpoint that, some folks feel strongly about. So if it's something like, one of the factors we want you to look at when considering the prioritization is high usage by bike and peds, because I think that's what you're saying is that there are a lot of people who use Woodland. It's not going to show up because you're looking at car data. So high usage by bike and peds. So I would be surprised if the staff, I'd be surprised if the staff didn't know the streets that were high usage bike and peds. So I'm thinking that when you're looking at the evaluation, you're looking at how the scoring is. And we've asked you to add a step in the process, which is, okay, you're looking at the scoring, please consider bike and ped high usage streets, that you can do that. If that's not the case, and the staff doesn't have, top of mind or a very good handle on which are the high usage, then the next question would be, how do we measure high usage of bike and peds, which is not, I would suspect is not difficult. So Azalea, when you're with your staff, you've scored a bunch of these, this input coming in, you're looking at the spreadsheet. And we'd like to suggest that if there's a place to put extra weight when, comparing two similar situations on high usage, is that something that you feel the staff is capable of doing?
We can go back. I think you put it very clearly, and I think that is enough for us to go back and assess.
We can assess.
We can assess and then and propose how to incorporate that if we come up with a process to capture. But I think with what you just said, I think that was clear.
It was clear. We will have to look into data sources.
Yeah.
There are no promises being made in terms of like, yes, we can do that.
No, but
Yeah.
if there's consensus here on that direction and assessment, then let us go back and then, and, you know, explain what this feedback is and how we're addressing it to council.
Does that work for you? I'm not trying to like force a solution. I'm just trying to understand how to get this in the process.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think these network maps are important, because that's what we've indicated are the high usage streets in the absence of a data source like Streetlight for cyclists, which we don't have.
Right.
The maps are kind of like where we've told people to ride. So,
I agree. I think
but, so we should make those streets safe, whether they're officially, you know, arterials or not, they should be totally safe regardless. And we've had this issue with Oak Avenue. It's like, it's, you know, it's too
Yeah.
fast. It's a
Yeah.
badly designed street,
Yes.
but it's on the safe route to the school.
Right.
It just happens to be slightly outside the radius. Like, what
Mhm.
will it take to get Oak Avenue prioritized in
Mhm.
this system?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
like hundreds of kids use it back and forth every day.
Mhm.
I need a system that prioritizes Oak Avenue and Olive Street, you know, even though it's not part of the Middle Avenue project. And
Understood.
takes a more comprehensive network-driven
Understood.
approach to the full route that we've told our citizens to use.
So I hope this is useful to you. I don't know if it is, but I mean, you and I were around when the Middle Avenue thing was taking
Yeah.
place. And there was comment by the commission and there was public comment, which was, while you're at it, why don't you like do the rest of that route to school? Why aren't you focusing on Oak and Olive? And at the time, what was told was the budget is this and that we have available to us. And that covers middle and it didn't cover sidewalk.
But now
So-
we're designing a system that
Understood.
allocates all the resources in the future.
Yes.
So we should make sure we get that system right and reflects this idea of connectivity in the design of the system.
Well, so I guess I have a slightly different view, which is I think, sorry. I think I like the solution of keeping the scoring system and adding as it a consideration rather than immediately prioritizing it, because I think this is really focused on the existence of unsafe conditions. So for example, on Oak, like I go down Oak all the time. I agree with you. It should be, we should have a network approach. And when we do something like Middle, we should immediately resolve Oak and Olive. But if there's a street, like, you know, a half a mile away where there have been near misses, if we can record them, or, you know, collisions, or people are going down, you know, the street, you know, recorded at 50 miles per hour or something, I would address that over Oak, even though it's part of a network. I think we have to prioritize like immediate threats to safety. That's just my take on what this program is trying to do.
Okay, can I,
That's where I go.
can I just ask a question here now that we're here? Oh, sorry. Are Oak, Olive, Lemon, are those streets even eligible for the Slow Streets program? Like, what are the category of, well, no, what are, no, they're not. What are the categories of streets that are eligible for this?
The neighborhood connector, bicycle boulevard, and local access,
Okay, then yes, they're all three of those.
and not on an emergency response route, which isn't to say it's not eligible, but it wouldn't be through this process.
Oh, I don't know. How do we, oh, you know that. I don't know that.
It's there's a map in the draft plan.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, I mean, I see. I guess I understand the resistance to the connector piece because I see how this is different than the TMP and the connectory bit. But also I see that in that graph, like we're only capturing cars. That's really what we're capturing. And that's fine because they're typically the ones that are causing the problem. I mean, but it's just interesting that we're not looking at cyclists and we're not cataloging anyone else's numbers, but how many cars go down that street and how fast they go down that street and whether they've hit anything yet. So like that, I get it, but also it feels like there should be some room to say, hey, lots of these other vulnerable users use this road, even though it's not right next to a school. So I hear like that part that we're all interested in. So like, we're talking about the people who are the least safe. So we're definitely like safety enhancing. I think that is where I feel like I'm sort of stuck in trying to.
Can I attempt to summarize?
Yeah.
Because, so I think we overall, the points that exist already on this table, I think we would approve in a motion. And we also talked about adding, what was the first one that we talked about?
The speed.
Oh, the nonlinear speed thing. That one, okay, so set that aside. On the connectivity side, we would recommend trying to incorporate some metric that addresses non-car vulnerable road users and their how prevalent they are on the street, which is not captured elsewhere in this data. So is that, and
Yes.
okay. Can I motion that?
Before you were saying high usage by bicycles and pedestrians, that was a little bit more concise.
Sure. I don't know what I said. Whatever it was. Oh, that was that.
Speed more.
So if there's 1 mile per hour over the speed limit, it could get 1 point. And I'm not saying this is how it would be. I'm just giving a hypothetical. So if it was 5 miles per hour over the speed limit, it would get more than 4 or 5 points. Like it might get because it's that much more dangerous. And so instead of just 1 point per mile per hour over the speed limit, it would be something that would be, because it's so much more dangerous to be so much more faster. Therefore, yeah.
All right, so that's your motion.
Okay. Do we need to read that back, or is everyone happy with whatever I stuttered through? Can I get a second? Commissioner Askoff for the second.
Okay, so who made the motion? Okay. And Roscoe's saying. Okay.
Okay. And in favor, please raise your hand.
Unanimous in favor.
Hey. Thank you, everybody, for such a detailed discussion.
That was a whopper agenda.
We
Just
have
say
more.
that was lovely how y'all really got
Yeah.
like into the nitty gritty, hammered it out. It is late. Well done, everybody.
We have more.
And-
We have informational items.
Oh.
Under information. Under informational items, city staff provides an update on matters of importance to the commission. Informational items are not action items. However, a commissioner, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. The first informational item tonight is F1 update on major project status. Katrine, do we have any major project updates?
I do not. I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you.
Speed feedback signs on middle, any time frame on that?
I don't know a time frame. I know they're not here yet.
The lead time has been an issue. I did want to add, however, that in terms of reports, we're going to council on the 27th to discuss the Middle Avenue undercrossing project. It'll be a study session on the 27th. Yes. Yes. So we're at an inflection point on that project.
So, and what was the other informational item? Oh, the shuttle.
That was so we provided an informational item on Middle, also on the shuttles yesterday. The 27th will be a study session on Middle.
But you're not going to council on the shuttle?
No,
Okay.
just on
That's-
Middle.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Any committee? Oh, do you need to call for public comment? I guess we did have a major project update, I guess. Would you like to call for public comment?
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please fill out a speaker card from the back table, bring it to the clerk's desk, and please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Having no one in queue for public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you. Are there any committee or subcommittee reports? All right. I would like to adjourn this meeting at 10:36 p.m. Thank you, everyone.